Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order and do the land acknowledgement. Municipality of Dysart acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Bullswell, and Georgina First Nations. And we thank those nations for their care and stewardship over this shared land. Okay, can we have a resolution to adopt the agenda? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Dysart et al. Held on May 23rd, 2023 be approved as presented.
Mover and seconder, Walt and Pat. All in favor? Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, adoption of the minutes.
Be it resolved that council approves the May 9th regular council meeting minutes as circulated.
Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Okay, anything from the county to report, Walt? Well, of course, we're spending a lot of time on this hospital thing, which is really not our mandate, but we're spending time on it, so I'll leave it there. Delegations. We got the auditor, I believe. This will be good news, I'm sure. Have we got them in, Lori? Okay, folks, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Andrea Hewlett. I'm a principal with Grant Thornton. We also have Nathaniel Tracy Stone with us today. He is a manager at Grant Thornton. And we're going to take you through your financial statements, the draft financial statements, and then our report to council.
Okay. Go ahead then, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Share my screen. I know when you can see the statements. Are those showing?
Not yet.
Do you see the statements?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll be taking you through the consolidated financial statements for the municipality of Dysart as of December 31st, 2022, which, as per the table of contents, encompasses our independent auditor's report, the consolidated statement of financial position, operations, change in net debt, cash flows, and the note disclosures. Move down to the auditor's report. The audit report is very consistent with previous years. We have an unqualified opinion. As stated here, in our opinion, the consolidated statements present fairly in all material aspects and are in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. So this is all very similar to previous years. Moving on to the statement of financial position, these balances are very consistent with previous years with some overall variances. As you can see, cash and cash equivalents have increased from the previous year from 9.8 million from 7.7 million in the previous year. We'll see the breakdown of that in the statement of cash flow shortly. The landfill closure and post-closure liability has also increased to 6 million versus 4.4 million in the previous year. Overall municipal debt and lease obligations have decreased as a result of repayments. So 2.1 million versus 2.7 million and 62,000 versus 205K respectively. Overall accumulated surplus of 34.6 million versus 34 million in the previous year. Moving on to the statement of operations, actual figures for 2022 are overall in line with the budgeted figures with a few exceptions. The gain on disposition of tangible capital assets of over $1 million. This is not in the budgeted line, a budgeted line item. Additionally, user charges, licenses, and fines came in at 3.9 million versus 3.1 million budgeted. This contributed to an overall total revenue of 19.5 million versus 16.7 million in the previous year and 17.3 million budgeted. Total expenses came in at 18.9 million versus 17.2 million in the previous year and budgeted of 19.2 million. The largest variances were between transportation services and environmental services here for the budget. As a result, the annual surplus for 2022 was 616K. This is compared to the previous year's deficit of 455K and a budgeted deficit of 1.9 million. So moving on to the statement of changes in net debt, the significant changes from the previous year is a result of the disposition of the tangible capital assets, as mentioned in the statement of operations. The gain on the disposition and proceeds of this disposal net to 341K. Your total net debt figures end at 414K versus 1.4 million in the previous year. Moving on to the statement of cash flows. The increase from cash from the previous year is largely the result of the 616K surplus for 2022 and the 1.4 million in proceeds from the sale of tangible capital assets, which is offset largely by the gain of disposition of 1 million. The remainder is relatively consistent with the previous year as well. As we have here, the ending balance of 9.8 versus 7.7 million. Moving on to the note disclosures. These disclosures are very consistent with the previous year, and also they're consistent with the approved policies for the municipality with no significant changes from the previous year. It's okay with everyone. I'll skip to note 3 as 1 and 2 are unchanged and consistent with the approved policies. So note 3 is the breakdown of trust funds for the cemetery. No significant change here, 164K versus 150K, 58K in the previous year. Note 4, taxation raised on behalf of others. This is the breakdown of taxation revenue raised for the school boards in the County of Haliburton. Overall, an increase from 14 million from 13.6 million in the previous year. Note 5, the restricted cash and cash equivalents. Here we have the breakdown, restricted cash and then restricted money market and bond funds, a total of 512K versus 531K in the previous year. The obligatory reserves, which we'll get down in the deferred revenue note 8 of 1.18 million versus 1.2 million in the previous year. So currently the reserve is underfunded by 668,000 versus 748,000 in the previous year. Note 6 is the breakdown of the cash and cash equivalents. Overall, this, as we noted in the statement of cash flows, a balance of 9.8 million versus 7.7 million in the previous year. No significant changes beyond the unrestricted GIC balance, which has gone from 4.5 million versus 6,319 in the previous year. Additionally, also the unrestricted cash has decreased as a result from 4.3 million to 1.4 million. Accounts receivable, note 7, overall pretty consistent with the previous year. Ending balance is 773K versus 573K. With the breakdown of Canada, Ontario, and other here, relatively consistent with the previous year. Note 8 is the breakdown for deferred revenue and the obligatory reserves. So the total balance for the obligatory reserves being 1.18 million versus 1.27 million. And there's also other deferred revenue of 369K versus 462K. Here we have the actual breakdown for the obligatory reserves for the segments. So they get a building department, 426K, gas tax, 425K, parking, 65K, parkland, 264K, totaling 1.18 million. Note 9 is the landfill closure and post-closure liability. This is also showing the comparative figures. So the post-closure cost liability has been estimated at December 31st, 2022 to be 6,096,371 versus the previous year, 4,432,700. Relatively consistent.
Can I ask you a question right there? How did you come up with that?
So this is actually the information used to determine the liability is provided by GP2G Consultants Inc. So it is an estimate that they have provided.
So we need to get that from them to verify it, I guess. I'm not questioning the number. I'm just questioning how it jumped $2 million in 1 year. Because it's like, it's about $300,000 to close the one site. So I don't know how they got such a big amount. But anyway, that's not your problem.
So I'll continue on. Sorry. The employee future benefits. So here we have the OMERS, the OMERS benefits. So the results evaluation disclosed the total actuarial liabilities of 130 million. And then the actual assets to date of 123 million. So that indicates that there's an actuarial deficit of 6,678 million. Overall, pretty consistent with the previous years. Breakdown here, and the contributions made to OMERS for 2022 were 324K versus 303K in the previous year. Skip down. So the post-employment benefit liability as of December 31st, 2022 includes the following components. So we have the breakdown, accrued benefit obligation, and the unamortized actuarial gains, 427K versus 391K the previous year. We also have the breakdown of the post-employment benefit expense here. Very consistent with the previous year, no significant changes. Note 11 represents the municipal debt. So this is the breakdown of municipal debt. As noted in the statement of cash flows, there's been consistent significant repayments. So the total debt being of 2.19 million in the current year versus 2.7 in the previous year. And we can see that the future payments for the next 3 years here are 2.19 million, and then interest of 18K. Note 12 is the capital lease obligations. As also noted in the statement of cash flows, there's been significant repayment for these. There's only 2 remaining. One has been fully paid off in 2022. So total lease obligations 62K versus 205K in the previous year. The accumulated surplus. This is the breakdown of the accumulated surplus. Significant variances from the previous year, largely the result of the landfill liability increase. So you had 6.9K versus 4.4 million in the previous year. And then also the municipal debt repayments, and then the overall increase in the discretionary reserve fund balances of 6.8 million versus 5.1 million in the previous year. 14 represents the contingent liabilities and commitments note. So overall, the municipality hasn't pulled upon the line of credit here. So there's no balance owing as of December 31st, and there was no amount owing in the previous year. The spending commitments also are broken down here. Nothing too significant. Note 15 just represents the budgeted amounts for revenue and expenses that were shown on the statement of operations. So this was the breakdown for revenue at 17.3 million. And then there was the expenditures also noted. These were approved as of February 11th, 2022. And so the approved budget was $1.9 million deficit there, as per the statement of operations. Note 16 is the breakdown of tangible capital assets. So we got land improvements, building, equipment, vehicles, roads, sewer, bridges, and culverts, and assets under constructions. Total cost of 85 million. Accumulated amortization of 50 million, and then a ending net book value of 34,995,000. This is compared to the 2021 figures here of cost of 84 million, accumulated amortization of 49 million, and an ending book value of 35 million. The segment information, note 17, is broken down. We'll go to the schedule here. For the general government, protections to persons and property, transportation services, environmental services, health services, recreational and cultural services, planning and development. And we can see that the annual surplus for each at the bottom here, hopefully it's not too small. You got 921K for general government, 1.3 million for protections to persons and property. There's a deficit of 1.23 million for transportation services, a deficit of 112K for environmental services, a surplus of 144K for health services, a deficit of 364K of recreational cultural services, and a deficit of 94K in planning and development. This contributed to an overall surplus of the 616K in 2022. This compared to the previous year's segment information. As we can see, there was an overall deficit of 455K. Sorry, I said an overall surplus of 616K in 2022 versus an overall deficit of 455K in the previous year. So moving on, we have the financial statements for the trust fund as of December 31st, 2022. And for our independent auditors report, similar to the main audit, unqualified, no issues, all in accordance. So very same verbiage here. The statement of financial position, very minimal changes compared to the previous year. Cash and the due from municipality, and an accumulated surplus balance of 164K versus 153K in the previous year. The statement of operations breakdown, again, very consistent with the previous year. Overall, no significant changes. The notes as well are in accordance with the policies, the approved policies of the municipality, and there are no changes to these notes. So if there are any questions, we'll move on to the independent auditors report. Andrea, do you want to share your screen?
I can, or you can share, and then I
can just move on here.
Embarrass myself with my technical inabilities.
Sorry, do you see my screen?
Yeah, we're good now. Thanks, Nate.
Yep.
So this is our report to council. If you can scroll down to the executive summary, maybe, Nate. So the point of this communication is for open dialogue between management, ourselves, and the council to kind of go over our audit strategy, the results of our audit procedures, and any sorts of bits and bobs that we've discovered along the way that are beneficial for the council to know. We have an engagement letter that was signed by Barbara as of May the 2nd. In that table there is the list of all of the deliverables. So we provide and prepare, these are kind of the products of our audit. So these are the draft financial statements that Nathaniel just went over. In addition to those statements, there is a compilation report on the numbered company entity that we work with Barbara to get prepared. There is this report, the communication of our audit strategy and results, and then there's also a financial information return that is a work in progress right now, making sure we've got that one ready to go and will be ready before you need it to be turned in. So the status of our audit, we are substantially complete. The things that remain at this point would be the approval of the statements by council. When that occurs, there's a management representation letter that gets signed by Barbara and team, and then that sets the audit report date. And then that date is a date that we perform subsequent event procedures up to. We'll also do some legal inquiries just to make sure that there's no contingent liabilities or claims out there that we need to be disclosing in our financial statements. And then also, I think we're working on getting a bank confirmation to say the right thing. I think it maybe came back a little incorrect. So we do our audit based on where the risks of material misstatement live. So we look at the municipality, we look at the lines of revenue and the expenses, and we look at the control procedures that are in place at the municipality level. And then what we do is we determine where the greater risk of material misstatement lives in your operations, in your numbers, and we kind of divide our audit work accordingly. So if there's a greater amount or a chance of material misstatement, then we would be spending more of our audit time there. I'm not going to go over it in detail because I'm sure it's probably not something you're super interested in. But if you were, Appendix A and Appendix B detail out how we break down our audit and our approach to that audit. So it's kind of a detailed plan of the plan we follow to figure out what work we're going to do and when we're going to do it. If you scroll down to the next page for me, Nate. So the next page here, we're going over, oh, it's not moving.
Sorry, is it frozen on your end? It's still on the CAS 315 part.
Okay, so CAS 315, this is a new auditing standard. It really doesn't mean a lot to you as council and as management, but it was important for us to mention that, you know, we have applied all of the new policies for auditing into your audit. So Barbara and team probably noticed we were asking some additional questions, clarifying a few different things. There was probably a lot more conversation about things that maybe we hadn't discussed in the past. And that was all a part of bringing in the kind of the new guidance around identifying and assessing risks of material misstatement. And the auditing standards now have us looking in a little more detail in places where we maybe didn't look before. So that really is kind of an explanation to Barbara for why we had so many extra questions that we might not have had in the past. So if we scroll down to the next page, our audit risks and results. So part of our audit is working and discussing with management and assessing whether there are any kind of lasting impacts of COVID-19 and economic changes that really need to be considered and disclosed through our audit. And so, you know, we really felt like there's very kind of limited impact on the numbers. And I mean, that's kind of, you can see that, right? You've got your user fees coming up year over year, which we would expect as things open up and you know, our places of work and life get a little busier. So we didn't feel that there was any adjustments or disclosures required to the financial statements for that perspective. As for our significant risks, so in an audit, these first two here, any audit, big or small, there are two presumed risks of fraud in an audit. One of them lives in revenue. And so in the municipality situation, we looked to the user fee revenue stream as being the one that's kind of most susceptible to the potential for fraud in its revenue recognition. So we performed a walkthrough of the processes and controls around those revenues. We also tested a sample of transactions. We looked at some analytical procedures for year over year and year over a couple years. And so from our findings, we do not believe revenue is materially misstated in that line. The second presumed fraud risk that lives in every audit is management's ability to either directly or indirectly manipulate accounting records through overriding internal controls. So what do we do there? We look at the appropriateness of the journal entries, especially the general journal entries. We look at accounting estimates for bias. We look at the business rationale if there are significant transactions or transactions outside the normal course. We look for non-routine transactions and that those are being accounted for correctly. And then we also look at the control environment, especially around the preparation, review, and approval of those general journal entries. So there's just a note here. In the prior year, there was a note in the internal control letter to council surrounding the monitoring controls over the review of general journal entries. So during the year, we did note that while management still has the ability to post or to approve journal entries, that the actual operational process has changed. And so management is no longer approving journal entries in that situation. So there's no indication or suspicion of fraud or illegal acts based on what we reviewed through our work. We'd kind of hinted about the landfill before, and I know there was a little question about the, that seems like it jumped a bit high. So we get the third-party management expert report And we look at the assumptions within that report and kind of do a quick check on the calculation. We're looking at the qualifications of the expert that management has received the report from. And then, we did propose and it was approved to do the journal entry to adjust that landfill liability to the value that was coming out from the current year's calculations. There's a little bit more on that going forward as well. On the next page there. Other areas of focus for us, so accounts payable, making sure that the accounts payable is correctly stated and the operating expenses that are being recorded in the correct period. So we do that by looking at some of the liabilities that would have been posted subsequent to year end and making sure that they've been posted in the correct period. There's the employee future benefits. So that is done through the review of the actuarial report that management obtains. And then those disclosures are included within your note disclosures that Nate went over. I think that was note 10. Fraud and illegal acts. So our audit procedures are designed and performed to allow us to form an opinion on the consolidated financial statements. So these procedures are not designed to find fraud or illegal acts. Sometimes they do, sometimes we find internal control deficiencies that we bring forward to you. So through the work that we have performed, we did not detect any fraudulent or illegal acts or misstatements therefrom. On the next page, so this goes into a little more detail, and I'm wondering if this might help answer the questions council had around the landfill estimate closing costs. So we obtain the reports from management's third-party expert, and then what happens there is there's an annual average index, and there's prices that go in there. There's also there's the inflation plays a role for doing the present value of those post-close expenditures. And so I think that's probably what's really driving the 6 million, although if Barbara wanted to chime in, Barbara almost put her hand up when we were talking about it the first time. So I'm not sure if council would like to maybe hear what Barbara had to say, or are we good to move forward?
I think we're good to move.
Yeah, okay.
We can
So-
we can talk to Barbara for sure.
I'm sure you have a direct line to her, so yes.
Yeah.
So the post-employment benefits, again, that's just going over in a little more detail the work that is done and the numbers that go into those plans. It is a multi-employer plan. So in the notes where you're seeing that there is a deficit in that plan, that's not your responsibility to bear alone. It's a multi-employer plan, so everybody would be bearing the brunt of filling in that funding gap that exists. But we did want to make sure that you have in your financial statements all of the disclosures, all of the information that OMERS has provided, as well as all of the kind of the assumptions that go into some of where those numbers come from. On the next page, this is a summary of the adjustments that were proposed and approved, and thus when you're looking at your draft financial statements, these adjustments are all flowing through those numbers. So the largest one here, the one of most interest, is probably just that bump up to get the landfill liability to the estimated cost. There's a move here for the Irish Line pit loan to pull it out of working funds. We need to and like to separate the principal portions separate from the interest portions to show those the way we like to. So that adjustment went through. There's a small entry there that pulls the numbered company statement of operations and their balance sheet into the consolidated financial statements, as well as a small adjustment to opening reserves just to make sure everything balanced from last year before we got started on this year. On the next page, you'll see that we do not have any unadjusted misstatements. So anything that we found that needed adjusting was actually adjusted. There's nothing that we kind of passed on making the adjustment for. Same is true with disclosure matters. There were no changes made by us to the financial statements to disclose things differently. And then the next page, so we kind of touched on this already. I mean, we're not doing an internal control audit. What we are doing is obtaining an understanding of the internal controls around financial reporting to the extent necessary to make sure that our audit is planned appropriately and we've determined the right nature, extent, and timing for our work. So while we're not expressing an opinion on the controls around financial reporting, as deficiencies or things come up that are of note, we do like to bring those forward. So I've already spoken to it, but in Appendix E is our formal internal controls letter that just identifies the fact that, you know, the treasurer still, as last year, still has the ability to approve general journal entries. However, the operational process has changed in such that Barbara is not approving journal entries anymore. But for anyone who is reviewing financial statements and reporting, it is maybe important to note that, you know, the physical ability still exists. Technical updates. So there are some, we call it PSAS. There are some PSAS accounting standard updates that are going to come into play. Probably the largest one that will have an impact on you potentially is the asset retirement obligations. So our team of auditors that do municipality audits will sit down this summer, take a real hard look at that and figure out what implications that might or might not have to your financial statements. And then we'll work with Barbara to make sure we have everything we need so that doesn't hold us back. And then for anyone who's interested, and I wouldn't imagine it would be many, but for anybody that is interested, there's a little detail here about the changes in the Accounting Standard 315. And so how we approach our audit differently. And so this is kind of highlighting the different way we audit it. So for Barbara, this would it probably makes sense why we asked some of the questions that we asked this year is coming through the changes here in inherent risks and risk factors and those sorts of things. And then we're into the appendices, which I wasn't going to go over in detail unless you guys would like me to. Appendices A and B are really just how our audit unfolds, how we plan our audit and the different stages and phases that our audit goes through. Appendix C is just the draft auditor's report, which you've already sort of seen in the financial statements. Appendix D is the management representation letter that Barbara and team will be signing. There's the internal control letter, and then there's some more detailed information about the changes to the accounting standards and the changes to auditing standards. Was there any questions?
Any questions from anyone? No, I think you've done a pretty thorough job of explaining it.
Okay, thank you.
So anybody got any questions then?
It was mentioned earlier on that Barbara used to control the journal entries going in and out, and she doesn't do that anymore. Was there a reason for that, or just?
Yeah, so typically in audit world, you like to have your duties, like you like to have good segregation of duties. So what you would, I mean, in a perfect world, you would have somebody who's creating the journal entry, and then that journal entry would be being reviewed by somebody different and would be signed off, or in the system would be electronically approved by somebody different, just to make sure that you've got good segregation of duties. So what was noticed in the prior year is that I think Barbara probably had to jump in and approve some journal entries at some point. And Barbara definitely has the ability within the system to approve journal entries. And so operationally this year, the change was made that Barbara is not posting journal entries, but I don't think the system itself has changed or evolved in a way that she cannot. So small accounting teams, you know, you don't want to have, it's the cost benefit of, do we take away someone's access to be able to do this, and then if someone's on vacation and does everything wait until they come back, or do we allow Barbara to have the ability to do so, and just operationally, you know, you don't want to be posting and approving or creating and approving. You would want somebody different in the process, but do we want to bog you down by taking away the ability to do so, so everything sits and waits for somebody to come back from vacation, you know, that kind of thing. So it really ends up being a cost benefit. In a small team, you end up having some places where duties are not segregated as wonderfully as you'd like. And that's why it's just like a word of caution to those charged with governance, just like this ability exists, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. I don't know if there's an alternative that takes Barbara's power to approve entries away and still allows the finance team to function the way they need to function. But just, kind of continuous improvement to have those duties segregated, to have, individual people responsible for their budgets and accountable for their budgets. You've got all of those other compensating controls in place that kind of give you some comfort around those numbers. I don't know if I helped or hindered there.
Sure.
Barbara
Clear
would
as
like
mud,
to chime
isn't
in. Clear as mud. Yeah, that's about right.
Yes. So good morning. And just to add to the point, yes, I understand the segregation of duties, and operationally, we have found an alternative where I no longer will post a journal entry to the system. And I think that was demonstrated during the 2022 operations. So from a staff perspective, we have found a solution that will not hinder our performance.
So it's a member of staff then, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, within the finance team. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I think if that's good, thank you.
Okay.
So we'll have a resolution to pass here and then have the necessary letters from Barbara, I guess, and we'll be good to go.
Yep.
Okay, we'll have a resolution then.
Be it resolved, the council accepts the 2022 audited financial statements from Grant Thornton LLP as presented.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. I guess we've got, is Greg Brown coming in now? Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Morning. Computers got rid of most paper, didn't it? Really? That was a bit of a fib, wasn't it? Pretty fancy.
Yeah, this is same pictures last month, guys. I was here on April the 23rd, and I just need to get some direction about two of the things that we talked about then. Hope you had a good weekend and back to work. So I was here last month about assuming this the black portion of the road here, Brook Trout Run and Stothard Creek Road. And also we talked about the security that's held on those roads, as well as the 4 lots that are held for security on the north portion, phase 2, which is predominantly Stothard Creek Road. And I was just hoping to get a response. I've heard through the grapevine that there's sorry.
Yeah, need your mic.
There, sorry,
It's okay.
that's working now.
Okay, the red's on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Anyway, I've heard that maybe
I should re-engage this company to do this drainage plan. I've also heard that there's been an engineer brought in to review the roads. I don't know. I haven't seen anything in writing, so I haven't done anything more about the drainage plan. I'm hoping that if there's a possibility of having this 1.5 kilometers assumed, then I can get this drainage plan completed in short order, and get this benefit for the residents in there. One of the things now is, which I never really thought about, but you've already assumed about 300 feet of this road, and that was a goodwill thing that the council did in order that the school kids can get on the bus right at Ilman Road, which is the black road on the right-hand side, and Brook Trout Run, the first intersection there by Lot 1. And now the bus goes to the top of the hill and does a 3-point turn, and that's had dust control, which is quite significant benefit to the residents this time of year. Of course, there's plowing and sanding in the winter that would come as part of the assumption as well. I've pointed out, probably a broken record by now, that there are about $400,000 of taxes in the municipal coffers now that's been accumulating over the last 31 years. And moving forward, there's a tax base now this year of $37,000 in land taxes. And the average over the next 3 to 4 years before phase 2 might be assumed would be approximately $61,000 a year. That would offset any expenditures by the municipality. So that's really all that I have to bother you about. I'm sorry that I had to come back, but I just need to get some direction in writing. Municipalities certainly done quite a bit. As I brought this little table here last time, and there's about 12 things that were outlined that the previous council did as far as assuming this 1.5 kilometers. But then there were some hesitation with this council, which is reasonable. But I just like to get some input as to what I should be doing and what you're willing to do.
Well, I think there was some hesitation by this council, mainly because we don't want you doing things 2 or 3 times. So the first thing you should do is get the engineer's report. And if you don't do the stormwater management and it's wrong, then you got to tear things up to do it again. So I think it's council's opinion that you have to proceed with those.
Okay, fine. I will. Yeah, the engineer is something that the municipality is providing. Is that correct?
They call in the engineer. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right.
I think you end up paying for it. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I know you do. So, but that's maybe if you've got your gravel down and the base is right, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I'd be happy to get on to that drainage plan again. I just didn't know if that was going to be moving forward or not, you know?
Well, that's just the way we treat everybody else. And this has been a unique development, as you say, it's 30-some years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the way it's been done, and it's probably it's doing it your way, which is fine, but it's also some cost because it's dragged out so long.
Well, the cost isn't a concern now because that's all paid for, but
Yeah.
Obviously just to bring as much benefit to the
Right.
residents as possible. And I'm hoping that the money in the municipal coffers will certainly help to pay for the little bit required to assume this
Right.
portion. But
So you want a letter in writing then from council to say that, to go ahead and do the engineering and the stormwater management.
Yeah, definitely stormwater management. The engineering, I understood from the previous council and also from our agreement. There's no mention of me paying for an engineer, but I thought that the roads department, Rob, he certainly gave me the impression when he said that he
They're
was
gonna peer
happy
review
with
it.
Fowler, you know.
Yeah.
And at
Well, the
least
impression-
yeah, so anyway, but yes, I would appreciate that. I'll get right on to that drainage plan. There will be, and I know this, it'll be a second drainage plan review for the second phase, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe a $5,000 or $6,000 expenditure.
And that's down the
Yeah.
road here.
Exactly, sure.
Okay,
Okay,
so-
appreciate that.
Anything, anybody's got that?
Yeah, Greg, I think, as far as the engineer goes, I think you better plan on getting, maybe have that discussion with Rob, who calls the engineer in.
Right,
But it's something you might as well, we all might as well get our head wrapped around it, but that's gonna have to be done too.
yeah,
So an engineer will come and inspect it and say whether the B gravel and everything underneath is suitable or not. You know, I think it's 450 millimeters of B gravel and all that stuff. They'll dig their holes, they'll look and see da. So it's fine to say the A gravel's on, which it is.
Yeah.
And, but they gotta know what's underneath it. So
Sure.
there definitely won't be any acceptance of anything until that's proven that that's
Yeah.
good. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying we just
Yeah.
need, you know,
Okay.
and that's standard for everybody. I've been through it myself. So
understood. Yeah,
you might as well figure on
Yeah.
that too, but maybe you can have that discussion with Rob, who calls who in. There is a couple local guys that do it, or at least one for sure that always did do it anyway.
right,
And he would come and have a look and say yes or no and.
Yeah.
And give you something in writing, you know, and.
Okay.
That's it. So
Sure.
there's those two issues, I think, that once
Yeah.
they're solved, then we can,
And we can move forward.
yeah.
yeah, okay, so am I understanding I should just confer with Rob, like,
Cause I don't know the answer who pays.
I don't
for
know
it.
who pays either. I'm just assuming that that's,
Yeah, or even who makes the call to
Yeah.
get them in, you know, so maybe if you and Rob can just have that quick discussion of
the
who does
question I
what
don't
there.
know is, should he do the stormwater management at the same time in case you do have to do something?
They're both go
both
hand in
hand
hand,
in
really.
hand.
well, you know, the way things are, it'll probably be September, October before the
Oh, boy.
drainage plan will be finished anyway, but I'm happy to get the engineering. If I can be assured that the drainage plan will be finished, you know, in that kind of time frame, then I'd be crazy not to get the engineer
Yeah,
in as well, you know.
Yep.
But anyway. Okay,
Okay.
any other questions?
Good.
All right,
do.
appreciate it. Thanks, Rita.
I have a question.
Oh, hi, Nancy.
So if Rob could give some clear written direction in like point form, what needs to be done, who contacts who pays for what, and then just CC us so we're all on the same page and know where things stand, that would be great.
All right. Well,
What I understand, it's you that contacts an engineer and gets that done.
I'm sorry, no.
It's you that has to contact the engineer to get that
I
done.
am.
Yeah. So you can. That's
All
We
right,
need to
no, I-
confirm.
Yeah, okay, fine. Barry, if I could ask that an individual locally that's done, or you could send me that information?
I guess I can, Brian Kernahan, I know.
Oh, okay,
He's done.
I
he's-
think I might know Brian.
Yeah, so he's done them for us. and,
Excellent, okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, need local.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks very much for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you.
Both.
Resolution.
Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from Greg Brown regarding road assumption for the Stothart Creek development.
Mover and seconder. Tammy and Carm, all in favor? Okay, Dan K. Go to the head of the class. No, I don't know. Well, I think everybody knows you, so that's a start.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Start.
Okay, so where do you want to start?
Well, let's start, simple thing is the set, this is all on the same property. She's got a permit for a new septic here. She had it last year. They still went in, told them they had to inspect it. Inspected it, told her she needed a new septic, but she's already got the permit. And then charge her $180, so.
Microphone, sorry.
You press
Mute
it.
your microphone.
Yeah.
So she's got a permit. And everything is approved but then we charged her another $180.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that a penalty then, or what was it?
No, it was just for an inspection.
is the cottage being used, the old cottage now?
Yeah,
Oh, so that's why they probably inspected the old septic then.
well, yeah, because she's waiting for a building permit.
Yeah,
To
okay.
put
I
the new
hear- I
septic system
hear-
in.
Okay. All right, well, we'll address that. See what
So
we
I
can do
think,
there.
you know, it should be credited back or up or whatever. And the, anyways, the main reason I'm here is, that's the one. But, is to see if council would reconsider this, minor variance. She's trying to build a new place. She's got 18.3% lot coverage. You're allowed 15%. So on this new build, there's a screen room and a deck and a porch that's all considered and going into the actual square footage. I don't know what opinion of minor is. I think everybody's got a different opinion of what minor is. So just wonder where council's sitting on this issue.
Well, you know about minor variances.
Yep.
They're for situations that are not resolvable.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I understand there's an open road allowance go down the side,
Not down the side.
but the shoreline road allowance is in
There's-
front,
Yeah, for,
and they've asked her to close that.
and why?
Yeah, okay. But I thought there was another road allowance.
There's a
there.
road allowance at the back.
So why would that be a lot cheaper and easier?
It would be a lot
Take half of
cheaper.
that.
She could probably take all of that for that matter, because the road is up on top of the hill, so
And that would solve
that would solve
the percentage thing.
well, if she buys if she's forced into buying the shore road allowance. There's already a building on there that's been there since 1958 and a deck. So that's all gonna go back into lot coverage again, so I don't know, and it's gonna be obviously a lot more money, but there's the back road allowance.
Well, I think that'll solve it. That's my opinion. Wouldn't it solve it? That'd take it up to the more than 18%, but at less than 15% then.
Yeah, I think that solves the problem for sure.
Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper than trying to shore the
Well,
shoreline.
Do we have, do we have a map that show a property sketch that shows the back road allowance and the front road allowance, or do we have?
No, not really. The
Not
surveys are old, Barry, and there's nothing, I mean, we had the lines drawn, so the lines are visible.
Yeah.
But, I don't
Well,
actually have,
I agree with that. Like, I mean, yeah, I've been there, looked at it, we went up and out of luck, and if there is the room for her to buy a road allowance, even if it's only half of it, I think it'll go. It
It'd be
would,
enough.
Well, yeah,
meets the requirement then.
yeah, even if it's, half 33 feet, I think it's 100 and something at the back, so there's 3,300.
Yeah, 3,300 feet.
So somebody would have to do the calculation for us, it's smarter than I am right now, but I think it would more than be enough, you know? I mean, if she has to buy it all, that's fine too, but if she only has to buy half of it, whatever's suitable for her.
Well, then she has to go to the neighbor on the other side, so it saves all that if she just buys half.
Well, it wouldn't be the neighbor on either side, it would be the one property. That would be-
That's what I mean, the one on top.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, the road's already way up here and the lot's down here.
Down here.
So
Yeah.
they're not gonna ever move move the road.
No,
So-
it can't.
I think if she would make an application to close half that road allowance, probably would solve it.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Pardon?
like, can we issue, like, if that is all in place, can we
Well,
at least get the?
That's what we'll
permits
talk
going?
to the planning department about. If the problem with it is, we gotta figure it out because if what happens if she says she's going and then she doesn't do it,
Well,
she's not gonna do that, but some people do, as you know.
well, in the past, you still got the hammer sitting right here.
So that's why I
Put it
think
on your
we,
taxes, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think that's why we need the application, at least to show good faith.
well, we'll get that going.
Yeah.
As long as that resolves it.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it's-
we'll talk to Jeff, but I'm sure it will.
when would she like to start, Bill? What was the?
Last year.
Okay, yeah, good enough.
Okay. Last fall, she was hoping to be in this like now, so,
Well, if
and
she
here
does
we are
that,
still here.
she
So,
does that application, then we can get going.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, we'll talk to Jeff and I'm sure that'll work out.
okay.
Okay, that was easier than the one before you.
You don't have to go there. I already had my conversation
there,
with him. so. Okay, so you'll talk about the,
That 180, we'll talk about that.
I don't think it was fair that she should have been charged that at all, so. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, resolution.
Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from Dan Kay about a minor variance application on the septic inspection at 1162 Dignan Road for lands of Culp.
Mover and seconder, Walt and Karen, all in favor? Okay. I don't know about the $180. I expect that's because they wouldn't know that, like, they may not know that.
Sorry, was that, so at some point, we went from outside company doing our inspections to in-house,
Yeah.
right? Where does that, I wonder, fit in that?
That started last year, didn't it?
Yeah, I'll have a review of it with the staff and
Okay.
get back to you on what happened.
Well, I don't know how that happened, but it did.
Everybody gets that process fee, right? Everybody has to pay that fee.
Yeah.
But I understand if we already had something in place,
For a new time,
then why even worry about really, and well, I guess you gotta inspect it just in case there's something drastically
there
wrong.
wouldn't be any inspection if they're not using the cottage, would there?
Yeah.
Like, it's complicated, doesn't it? Well, I guess we talked to somebody in building department about that. See what their take on that is. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's, when you're gonna spend 400,000 or 500,000, it's a big deal, but anyway. Okay, Mr. Peterson's coming up. Sorry, Nancy, I keep forgetting you're up there. I haven't seen your hand up, but I'll be watching for it.
Okay, thank you. It's okay, we'll pass that now.
Is that Mr. Peterson there?
I am, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we all had copies of this. It's kind of an interesting proposal you've got. So you want to just give us the highlights, what you're doing?
I've got a little 7-minute video I propose to run only because I've probably captured about a half hour's worth of information in there. So, and then we could go to questions afterwards and I can fill in a little more.
You didn't say you're going to talk for half an hour, did you?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay. Just want to clear that up.
Yeah. Okay, so if I can, I'll share my screen and run that video.
Sure.
Hi, I am Jade, your AI presenter. The Tiny Town Association is a federally incorporated not-for-profit, formed in 2017 to advocate for tiny homes. Tiny home design and construction methods, along with building and planning codes, have evolved, yet finding a place to live tiny remains the biggest challenge today. In response, the association has become a developer, building permanently affordable, environmentally responsible, tiny home communities developed through a lens of community-centric living. We are working to create small pocket communities and larger tiny town communities in municipalities across Ontario. We first proposed the pocket community model in a thoughtful density project for the United Way in Huntsville by adding 10 tiny homes to a residential property. This would have increased density from 4 people in the existing duplex to 24 people when complete. Our larger tiny town community projects can create vibrant villages on suburban and rural properties. Where municipal services are limited, our tech partners can provide the missing communal components on a 4-acre or larger development. To address the housing crisis, the Ontario government is looking for 1.5 million homes to be built over the next 10 years. 67% of this group, or just over 1 million people, fit the tiny home demographic, which includes first-time homebuyers, workers, and seniors in need of housing. While tiny homes directly support 1- and 2-person households through right-sizing seniors, we free up family-sized homes, effectively addressing all areas of housing concern. Through our partnerships with municipalities, we are working to create permanently affordable housing. We offer affordable rentals, rent-to-own, and affordable-to-purchase housing, with a path to ownership for those looking to build equity. The housing cooperative, made up of the tiny homeowners within the community, manage the property under its charter and bylaws on land leased from the Housing Land Trust. This development arrangement is a simple integration for a municipality, as there is one address, one tax bill, and one utility account for each of the services connected. We plan to create more than just affordable housing. Since 2017, we have studied tiny home communities across Europe and the US, finding that developments prosper where community is fostered. We adopted a community-centric approach that includes all ages, all incomes, eliminates segregation, connects with local agencies, and municipal programs. In a tiny home, the outside is the largest room in the house, so we have planned community gardens, orchards, greenhouses, picnic areas, outdoor gathering centers, and in larger developments, a community center for year-round socializing. By replacing a single residential property with a pocket or tiny town community, the municipal tax base is increased and new affordable housing is built. We plan to offer 3 house models, all based on a 384 square foot OBC compliant home design. These homes will include a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and an open concept design. During pre-development, we will work with the building and planning departments to ensure we meet all local bylaw requirements. Larger tiny town community developments can include a smart hub community center. This indoor gathering space includes a common room, dining area, commercial kitchen, and retail space on the main floor. Accessible by elevator are yoga and exercise areas, offices for traveling professionals, co-working space for small business residents, communal laundry facilities, and indoor container gardening. Where municipal services are not available, our technology partners' equipment can provide them when installed on the lower level of the hub. Where several developments are planned in a region, it makes sense to set up a centralized manufacturing facility to build locally. A minimum of 20 acres of development ensures enough volume for the factory to establish itself. As part of the local economic benefits, the facility will employ 70 full-time unskilled people, and we are excited at the prospect of our associate community builders providing training programs in the construction trades. The factory will also provide approved second suite units that support local urban intensification programs. The planning department in Fredericton, New Brunswick, shared their 12 neighbors' tiny home development zoning details. We found this to be a simple but effective way to enable the community. They used a comprehensive development district or CDD zoning that allows multi-residential, commercial, and institutional mixed use on a single property. A separate development agreement contained the project specifics, including building size, spacing, EMS access, roads, paths, utilities, and more. Where high-density housing can take years to complete, In only their second year, 12 Neighbors has installed 54 units and is adding 1 new unit every week. Here is a typical path to a tiny home development. We begin with an exploratory meeting where we discuss our project concepts, gauge interest, and answer questions. Next, we ask staff to provide 1 to 2 properties that we use to create a high-level plan, identifying the potential number of homes in the community. Based on this proposal, we look for a letter of support to apply for pre-development funding from FCM and CMHC. With funding approved, working with the planning and building departments as well as local contractors, we create a detailed project plan and budget. We package everything together into a proposal that we present to council for consideration, and upon approval, we apply to CMHC for funding for the development. We ask the municipality to provide land zoned for the development with municipal services brought to the property and all permit fees. We will arrange funding, manage the construction, and establish stewardship of the community, matching the municipal contribution with guaranteed affordable rental units. Where municipally owned land is not available, buying land for a development can work when sellers are interested in supporting an affordable housing development. We don't impose a minimum property size for a project, but will instead recommend a development plan based on the property available. Since 2017, we've been advocates for tiny homes and tiny home communities. During this time, we've connected with a broad range of businesses, covering all areas of housing development. While we are considered a startup, still working towards our first development, our associates bring years of experience in their respective construction fields. Under the Tiny Town Association umbrella, we are joining forces to build a showcase of affordable, environmentally responsible, tiny home communities. We have also built a team of tech associates to provide services and components for use in our communities. Tech provided, Ontario-approved services can include septic and organics processing, rainwater treatment, solar and small wind power generation, vertical container gardening, permeable roads, and other tech enhancements within the community. Our affordable housing model has received interest from municipalities across Ontario as a way to add affordable, environmentally responsible, and rapid on-demand housing. Feel free to reach out to us by email or by phone with any questions you may have, or if you would like to arrange a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Okay, that's a pretty good summary. Just how do people own these houses?
Well, we are in the construction, we have two phases. So during the construction phase, they will be able to purchase houses if it's something they can afford. And there will also be rental, and as the video showed, rent to own program. Once the development is complete, then the housing will transfer to a co-op and the land will transfer into a land trust. And that's our model to have this remain an affordable housing option in the future, in that individuals will not be able to, and this will be explained to them in advance. They won't be able to sell the houses on the open market. They'll only be able to, the cooperative will buy the house back from them, and it will be at a predetermined value. So it will be at the base cost for the house. So base year one, plus inflation. This is designed to maintain the equity they have in their house, but it removes the house from being an investment vehicle. So, and that's how we plan to have this remain affordable in the future for the next round of people moving into the community.
Makes sense. So what kind of bylaws are restricting junkers and old cars and that kind of thing on the property?
Well, we're still working through all the details with our lawyers, okay, as far as the cooperative structure and what those bylaws will be. But also, as you can see in the background here, we don't have there's communal parking, and you don't have a lot of space around each individual unit. There's just common area space in the center of each kind of little neighborhood. So we're hoping that will help, restrict that kind of accumulation of undesirable stuff that people own on the property and in the common areas.
Okay. I'll open it up to questions here. Councilors have any questions?
Is there, so what's up and going now? Where's the nearest one to us that's or is there any up and going actually right now?
There are not. No, we're still looking for that first start. Elliott Lake, the background, the image behind me is the closest in that they've already proposed a piece of property for us to partner on to develop, and we're applied for pre-development funding for that project. So we're working towards that. The fact that this is new, we're looking to partner with you. And we're not saying that we know everything that we're going to encounter during this process, because this is a new model of housing. So we're looking for municipalities that realize that this is new and realize the advantages of being early adopters of it. So yes.
Thank you.
Do you have another question, Barry? What are these houses going to sell for?
Our current target is 127.5 for the to purchase a home, and then $780 per month is our projected rent for our unit. And then if you're on a rent to own, that we customize to the participant, but we're looking at about $1,180. And basically that's working with CMHC. So the difference between the 780 rent and the 1180, let's say, I can't remember the number off the top of my head. That amount is then held by the financial institution that will be holding the mortgage. And it's a 5-year program. So at the end of the 5 years, the participant has accumulated enough money for a down payment, and also proven that they can maintain the payment to the financial institution. So they would then transfer to a mortgage payment, and the funds on account would become the down payment.
Okay, so a couple more questions. I'm always interested in the finances. So the $750 is the mortgage payment, and plus utilities, right?
No, so if a person owns their own home within the community, monthly fee is projected at this point to be $450.
Okay.
So that's kind of like your condo fee plus utilities. Where somebody is renting, it's $780, and that $780 includes the all your fees. So that would include like your condominium site fee, if you will, and your utilities plus the rent on that spot. And then where somebody is in the transition program, rent to own, then they're paying a premium on the rent, which becomes their savings towards a down payment.
So they're probably going to be vacant property. So do you count, what about getting hydro in and all the services? How's that calculated?
Right. Well, if there are, so we're looking to partner with the municipality, and for the municipality to provide property that they own for the development.
Right.
So where you have property, if there are utilities to the road, to the property line, then we would take the development from the municipal road in and throughout the property, and we'll manage that development and cost. If there are any services that are not there, then we would look to install communal services on the property that then we would maintain through contracts with the equipment providers.
Okay. Any other questions? It's an interesting concept. So if we are further interested, we would meet your group again, I guess.
Actually, at this point, we would look for staff to provide 1 or 2 properties that you think would be interesting to explore developing. Okay. We would then prepare a high-level development plan, essentially looking at how many houses we could look to put on that property, depending on how it's serviced. And then we would look, next step is we would look for a letter of support from either council, or it can be CAO or your mayor could provide a letter of support. And the letter of support is not a commitment. It just allows us to go ahead and say to the funders, CMHC, FCM, we've talked to council. They like the idea. They've proposed that this would be the property we would develop, and we would look for that pre-development funding. So if we get the pre-development funding from them, we would then go ahead and prepare an actual development plan for the site. And then we would present it to you for consideration and hopefully adoption, and we'd be able to go ahead with the development.
Another question, Walt?
Yeah, it was probably in your report, but what size of piece of property would you be looking for again, please?
Typically, I come back to you and would say, what is your housing needs? Okay, so unlike a traditional developer that says we want to develop X acres because we're looking to make X dollars in profit, we're interested in developing affordable housing. So the question is, what does the municipality need as far as affordable housing? And that could come from information from any housing agencies, seniors agencies or associations within the municipality, as far as and even workforce needs. So if you have manufacturing facilities that need housing for workers, we'd ask you to take a look at that, and then we can look at developing something in a 16 to 20 houses per acre density, depending on what servicing is available. So where we're looking at something that is unserved, in some areas, septic is usually the biggest obstacle, then we'd be looking at a minimum of 4-acre size to develop, so that we could put in communal septic services.
Does that answer your question, Walt?
Yeah, how many houses would you get on 4 acres again?
But 16 to 40. No, 20 times 4, 80, sorry. 32 to, must be short a cup of coffee or something this morning. 32 to 80, depending on the property.
Okay, thank you very much.
I hate to be like Kevin O'Leary, but how do you guys make any money out of all this?
Well, we're really not looking to make money. That's not the goal here. And I know that that's a hard thing for a lot of people to accept, but we're looking to really create affordable housing. I take a standard wage out of money that we raise and the development process that we're doing. Mostly what we have is people that are working on a volunteer basis. So that's what we're looking to do, is we're looking to develop affordable housing.
Well, that's more than fair. Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. Anything else for this gentleman? So we'll talk to planning and Nancy.
I have
you
a
had a
question. Have you just made any attempt to form any partnerships with organizations like Places for People?
We've talked to a number of them. We haven't gotten to the point of actually doing that with anybody. We are, we plan that as we progress in an area, we'll connect with any agencies and organizations that are local. We haven't done it in advance only because, we are looking to do this in multiple locations. And a lot of what we do is rely on what's already existing there. So working with local contractors for the infrastructure installation and housing organizations, et cetera. Once we establish a location in a municipality.
And you did say it's 384 square feet, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, sir, we'll be in touch.
Great, and I think I shared a link earlier, so all this information is on our website. And if you have further questions, I'm happy to meet individually or collectively again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Resolution.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from Ed Peterson, founder, director of operations for the Tiny Town Association, detailing their initiative to create small pocket communities and larger tiny town communities and municipalities across Ontario.
Jeff, do you have any comments on this?
I don't have any initial comments right now. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I can reach out to Ed in person too and have a conversation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, resolution then?
I just read it.
You read the resolution? Yeah, mover and seconder then. Tammy and Carm, all in favor? Carry.
Thank you.
I thought you were hiding this morning, Jeff. I hadn't seen you before. Okay, Lori took the blame. Is Gary Birch? I can't believe you can build it for that. Yeah.
I'm just talking about the building.
Right. Hey, Gary. Just, okay, we're happy to hear from you. Just press the button there, so that in the middle, so it goes red and we can hear you.
All right, so I'm on. Okay, so I sent a note last week, and I don't think you people got it. About background, there's some, so I had a lady at there. Copy it. In the past, I guess the past 2-3 weeks came to the spot where somebody wants to put a, what I call a granny flat, doesn't have to be a granny flat, but another second residential unit on their piece of property. And another one said, and somewhere else said the same thing. So all of a sudden I got thinking, with the issues we're having with rentals and also the fact for aging parents that will all be at some point in time, why can't you be allowed to put a secondary residence on a piece of property if it's large enough? So in my layout, I put, it could be for an aging parent, could be for a kid that wants to move out but can't afford in today's market, or it could be the much needed rental units. All I hear in the papers, the rental units, rental units, rental units for professionals, for teachers, for account, for anything. So what I said to you is, and I put on this 2 acres or more to get away from having a small lot, say in town, where someone sticks something in the back. Make sure it doesn't have to be 2 acres, but I said 2 acres. You're not on the lake, you're not on a river. So you're not in the issue of setbacks or the shoreline stuff we're going through and all that stuff. And you don't have those narrow 100-foot frontage with someone behind partying situation. So let's get off the lakes, let's get off the rivers. I said something small, like a 1,200 square foot home, which I think is pretty big for a secondary unit. You can get down to 800-900 square feet and make a dandy little spot, but I also want to allow some flexibility for the rental unit. So I said something under 1,200 square feet with its own separate septic and separate well. So it doesn't have to be right next door to you. If you have 50 acres, why not stick them back a little bit further so you're not on top of each other? But both the homes have to be owned by one person. You can't have 2 ownership. And this is where I'm saying you have control over what's being done. If it's sold, it has to be sold together. Never can it be separated, so you don't have to work into like a subdivision type thing. So, and the owner has to be in control of what's going on there. And both units use the shared driveway, so 1 entrance permit. So they're gonna try and put restrictions on it, but still allow it. Now, since then, I found that Algonquin Highlands has that in effect, that second residential dwelling. But in their, how they read it as maximum gross floor space of lesser than 75% of the gross floor space of the original, or up to 1,500 square feet. To me, 1,500 square feet is way too large for a secondary. Like I say, 800-900 works perfect. Are you looking for a couple of bedrooms on the main floor? But it says that it has approved sewage, but they're talking about using the same sewage. And I'm saying, no, I want different septic, different well. So this is, like I say, this came up. I was driving one day and I got thinking about it and made a few phone calls to a couple of counselors here and said, why not? The aging at home is a big issue you see in the newspaper all the time and around here. If you have an older parent, the rental unit is another one. So I brought this up for you guys to start talking about.
Yeah, some good ideas here. So, pretty straightforward, really, and
Very clear, isn't it? So you can vote on it now and pass it.
yeah. Jeff, do you got a comment here or Nancy?
I got one too.
Okay.
We already have secondary dwellings in our zoning bylaw, do we not?
Yeah, I think Jeff's gonna answer this.
Yeah, I can answer that if you like. Currently, the type of secondary dwelling unit that Mr. Birch is proposing is only permitted in the village where sewer is available. But there are secondary dwelling units permitted on most lots within the municipality. So they're permitted mostly in the terms of duplex dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, basement apartments, that type of thing. But my understanding is Mr. Birch is proposing second buildings on the property. So right now that's only permitted in the village where there's sewer.
So would that require, can a zoning change look after that, or?
I could come back with a detailed report, but just off the top of my head, I think because of this specific wording in our official plan, it's going to take an official plan amendment and zoning amendment. But having said that, based on the recent changes at the provincial level to the planning policy documents, there's support for this. This is the trend everything's kind of heading. This is the direction they're going. But we would need to update our policies.
That,
Jeff, or I'll even add to that a bit more. If we're looking at that, could we also look at increasing the square footage above garages to incorporate the same thing? Much to the same effect of what Gary's talking about, more living space and apartments and what have you at the same time.
If you notice the letter I submitted, the last paragraph, like an afterthought, was saying the same thing, Pat. Living space above a garage were limited, but if we're not on a lake, not on a river, you're not creating the situation that we have. That was a nightmare. And Maria, I was with you. I remember being in council upstairs late one night discussing this about limiting the square footage because of the nightmares that was happening on the lakes with that. So there again, I'm trying to get you off a lake, get you off the river, but increase that square footage above a garage.
and its own septic and, well, that's a big issue.
With its own septic and well.
Yeah.
All the stuff I'm talking about has its own septic, own well. So yes, therefore you have to make sure the property will allow a second septic. And also comes into play the percentage of coverage for the lot. There's restrictions on that as well, which to me helps restrict what can be done. And if you restrict the size of the secondary unit to be less than what the primary unit is, I think these are good restrictions.
So I guess the next thing, Jeff, is we need to see what we need to get, what kind of hurdles we need to, Carmen, you had your hand.
No, Pat, actually, it was a garage one I was gonna bring up.
Okay,
Pat mentioned it.
Yeah, above the garage has its own kitchen and own bathroom, and just also stipulation, because some municipalities are not allowed a kitchen, some municipalities are not allowed a bathroom, so there again, I'm saying that as well.
yes, Jeff.
Well, I just want to I think we're talking about two different things. So right now, above a garage, it's a private cabin. So the definition of a private cabin is overflow sleeping. It's not supposed to be a dwelling unit. That's why there's no kitchen permitted. But if we change our policies to permit 2 units, then you're right. One over top of a garage would be permitted with kitchen, with bathroom, at whatever size is determined. So I just want to clarify, I think we're talking about two separate things, the private cabin versus a secondary dwelling unit.
And wouldn't be allowed in the WR3 zone. Then. You'd have to
It's
be
not
strict.
recommended that additional residential units go in the waterfront,
Yeah.
no.
Nancy?
Just a question, how, is there, as through Jeff, is there a way that we can ensure that people don't build these secondary units and use them for Airbnbs so that we're defeating the purpose of trying to provide housing?
That's a good question. And off the top of my head, it's hard to answer. I think there's ways we could lock down our zoning. I keep referring it back to the county right now because they're the ones reviewing the short-term rental policies. So that might be an opportunity for them to look at it there. If it's something that we're going to come back and look at our level, I'm sure there's ways we can limit it via zoning or via standalone bylaw, but it is a good point. I don't think we want to create these units just for rentals.
Good luck trying to stop that. Anyway, yeah, off waterfront. Yeah, put the price down. No, some good stuff there, Gary.
It was one of those moments I had.
Well, they don't come that often, do they?
No, no.
I know about that. No, well, anyway, thanks. That's good. We'll pursue this.
Okay, thank
For
you.
sure.
Thank you, council, for listening to me.
No, thank you for coming. Okay. Okay, resolution then.
Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from Gary Birch requesting that council consider changing their existing planning policies to allow separate secondary dwellings to be built on certain properties, and further that staff be directed to bring back a report on the steps necessary to create and implement such policy.
Mover in a second, Tammy and Barry, all in favor? Thank you. You want to take 10 minutes? Sounds good to me.
Pool as well, was it? Seem to recall a request for a flag.
Hopefully she
pole.
remembers. Okay, and now again?
Yeah, Third try.
Andrea, Harcourt Community Center wants to know if, they said they haven't heard any word on a flag. So did they put in a request for a flag previously?
They, I got something, I think, I want to say 2 weeks ago or so about a flag, but I haven't had a chance to look into that further. Yeah, I know that we do the flags at the arena and at, down at the groundskeepers do the ones down at the lights. And we also do the ones at the cenotaph, but I can find out more about the flag down there. I think I had sent it on to Andrew, but so, yeah.
Okay, so if you could just check on that flag, and they also want a signboard or an event signboard. Did they mention that?
They mentioned that. Now that's something that would obviously have to be budgeted and go through council. As we know, they can be pretty expensive. So it's something that would have to come forward in the budgeting season, I would think, unless there's surplus somewhere that I'm unaware of.
Okay, I think that I did ask them to send me a picture of what they had in mind on what they wanted, so we kind of know what the cost would be. So I will go back to them too on that. I just wanted to see what they had for information.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And then depending on the size of the sign and zoning, depending what they want, it may have to go to the sign standards committee or the sign for approval, but I don't know what their zoning is there or anything. So there's a bit more into it than just picking a design and knowing a cost. But once we have an idea of what they're looking at, then it's easier to answer the questions.
Okay, and I was thinking that it wouldn't be it would be on the highway, like probably on the Dysart property there, is right across from the old Harcourt Road and the Loop Road. But I will double check that just to confirm what they actually want.
Yeah. Who's going to keep it up?
Yeah, I think they would be changing it all the time
Okay.
as events happen. And this
Okay.
one more thing, they just wanted, I guess, an okay to go ahead of what size for a storage beside the community center. So I'll just have to go back to them on that too. Because they had the money for it, they just didn't get confirmation on what we wanted them to have.
Okay, so you'll bring that back?
So I'll bring that back.
Okay. West Guilford, Carm?
Haven't had a meeting. Supposed to be last night, but being a holiday, nobody's there, but we did order all the fireworks for Canada Day, so they're en route.
Ready to go.
Ready to go for Susan.
Are you putting that in the lake or not? Yeah. Yeah, it can't be anywhere else, yeah. Safety for sure. Fire, especially with the fire ban on. Okay, Nancy, Rails End.
Hi, so we had a meeting last week, I think, and we're also working on their strategic plan. So all the members are have lots of input and are very committed to making Rails End work. Things to watch for starting the end of May is the youth online exhibition. The Arts and Crafts Festival is a goal. They've got lots of good vendors and they're getting lots of publicity out there. And the other thing is just a mention is the website, which is www.railsandgallery.com, and it has a list of all the events and exhibitions and their online shop. So if anyone's looking for a really unique gift, that's a really great place to go.
Good. Thank you. Resolution.
Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the May 2023 Rails End Gallery and Arts Center report.
Mover and seconder. Carm and Walt, all in favor? Carry. Halliburton BIA, Pat?
Marty, gotta check in with that group, again, with my father there a bit ago. I wasn't at the last meeting. But, in a nutshell, the fundraising that I guess is, will be mentioned later on, that
Yeah.
they're doing a pretty good job at it. So
Okay,
anyway.
good. Resolution.
Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the minutes from the March 28th, 2023 Downtown Halliburton VIA Board of Management meeting as information.
Mover and seconder, Pat and Carm, all in favor? Okay, Harvest Halliburton.
Strike two, wasn't there either. I'll follow, I'll follow those guys coming up again. Same thing as with my dad there, not getting.
Just
Not
as
getting
a,
to me.
I know it's not the subject, but I didn't see anything at the county for the large animal vet, did you? How did that get sent down? or-
Yeah, Mike Ritter said he was speaking to the Economic Development
Oh,
Department to
okay.
follow up
Oh,
on
there
that.
you go. Okay. Okay, as long as it's not lost. Source water protection, Walt?
No, I have nothing to report.
Nothing.
But could I ask a question? You brought it up just a minute or two ago in regard to the fire ban. I've had quite a few inquiries about that. People ask me when it might be lifted. Have you heard anything at all?
I don't think it rained enough to lift it myself, but I
No?
could be wrong.
We're talking about a bit more rain coming up, I think tomorrow
Tomorrow.
and then another good stretch of sun. So it's
Yeah.
hard to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Upper Trent, you haven't had another meeting, Barry?
No, we haven't, but I'm just going back on my phone here to check. I think Ed sent us. Tamara, maybe you can help me in this, about those two videos I was talking about.
Oh, yes.
So if we could kind of get that, the word out, they're actually really good. They really do explain a lot about how the Trent Severn works, and I think it would be great for everybody.
So we
to
could
watch.
shoot,
So-
we could shoot those out to the council members then?
Yeah, and even the public, I think now is ready for it. So I know he sent an email there just saying that if we could get that word out somehow, so we could just double check on that. These associations would be a good way to get that out
Yeah.
if it looks like it's something that's useful.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we'll work on that. Bioenergy, that, we've kind of shelved that. That was a project that was started about 6 years ago. That was to burn the chips from Halliburton Forest and heat the downtown and stuff with it, but there's no grants available, so I've just told them to put it aside for now, so we don't have to put that on the agenda anymore. They've agreed that there's nothing happening there, so.
We have to formally disband the corporation.
Yeah,
So
we'll have to
a meeting
disband
to
it.
do that.
Or else we could just leave it in limbo, I guess. I don't know what, depends what the lawyer says.
Except every year we have to file annual
okay.
returns on it.
Yeah,
So
so
there's
we better
extra
get
work.
rid of it.
and-
I can't see us tearing the town all to pieces again to do that.
Well, we did have the $3 million grant, but we lost it. So that kind of was
That
pretty
wouldn't blow wind on,
contingent. Not now, probably.
no. Okay. Ontario Trillium. Now, Andrea, you're on the hot seat.
I am. This one though, this is so there's a capital grant opportunity that's becoming available. The application period, I believe, opens Wednesday and is open until mid-June. It's as I said, for capital funding. So the Ontario Trillium Foundation is looking to support projects that improve access to community spaces, facilities, programs, and services, get people participating in the community, help improve and build community spaces, and make programs and services more efficient. So it's 100% funding up to $150,000. The last time we applied for the Trillium grant, it was for Head Lake Park. So staff are recommending this time around that we submit a grant application for a prefabricated playground with engineered wood surfacing and a permanent accessible privy at the Harcourt Community Center. They don't have a playground there right now. There's just a couple of swings, and there's no access to washrooms when the facility is closed. So there are some improvements to that area, such as the outdoor rink and multi-surface court that was installed last year, and the ball diamond, which is used quite a bit by the community. So this is what we're recommending. There's also quite a few young children there. I was there, I guess 2 weeks. I was there at the beginning of May for health and safety training, and I was amazed at how many people were coming through with the young children, different families on the different days we were there to use the swings and the bit of sand that was there. We did consider applying or suggesting to apply for this grant for Head Lake Park for site furnishings, benches, shade shelters, etc. But then given the fact that our previous grant with OTF was for Head Lake Park, we figured that it would probably be denied, and that it would be just better to apply for a different area for the grant. So we're looking at $150,000 grant and to make an application for that if council approves that.
Well, we don't want to trap ourselves again. That's the trouble is you go for these $150,000 grants and you have to put stuff in the ground. And as I understand it, they don't allow that. It's just the equipment.
No, that includes the ground.
Well, then we shouldn't be in much trouble down below because we could put most of that in
That was
excavation and base.
Yeah, a lot of that was part of the $600,000 quote was the site prep and the surface down there. So the 150 that's being proposed for this project includes the site prep and the engineered wood fiber as a surface.
Well, I'm all in favor of doing the right thing here, but I want to make sure that we've got enough kids out there to justify what we're doing, because even at Head Lake Park, it's a 10-year turnaround for this equipment. $600,000, so it's $60,000 a year that somebody's got to put aside to replace this stuff. So are we gonna, and Tammy, I think you need to feel the community out to see what needs there are.
I've already had previous feedback, like in the last year, that there are a lot more children that would use that if it was there, but we don't really have anything.
No,
like she
no,
said,
you
except
don't, but with
swings.
disabilities though,
So
This
well,
isn't about disabilities.
no, I don't.
this is just,
Just, yeah, and definitely our privy has been on the list of things that need to be fixed for like the last 10 years.
yeah, I know that.
So I am
Well,
really
if it's all
excited
for that,
about
then we
this.
should do it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this.
There wouldn't be, because we'd be picking prefab stuff basically out of catalog. It wouldn't be the big, long, drawn out consultation process or anything. It'd be like picking up play gymming, just getting it in. Really, for 150, that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Plus the other things you're doing with the washrooms and.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Andrea, if there might be an opportunity to include the sign that Tammy mentioned in that grant?
It would be tight depending what you're going for. We were looking at some prefab play structures just to have an idea of what the cost of those is, knowing that it's just the prefab play structure without any of the other work taking place. And those are about, like, for a small one that has a couple of slides and a few other things, you're looking around 75,000 to 80,000. The privy we were quoted prior from our staff was around $30,000 to do the full thing. So you're right there, it's 110,000 plus some site prep work and everything. So I don't know, I guess it depends on the type of sign and how much. Maybe a possibility, but yeah, sorry, I don't know what else to say. Just we'd have to look at what the prefab prices are, the groundwork, and all the part components of the privy to know if there would be enough left over for a sign.
So when you do a proposal, you're going to bring that back to council so we can look at it and make sure we're on the same page here?
At this point, we have a grant deadline. So we need the resolution from council to approve the application for the grant. We can certainly bring back that we haven't done that research yet because we don't even know if council wants us to do it. But if council agrees to have us apply for the grant, I'm sure, Andrea, you could probably bring back a sample of what we could buy with that.
We could bring back
want to
a
get
few
our
different-
prices down so we're within the grant.
Yeah, we could bring back a few different samples, and then obviously we would put it out for quotation, because we're looking at prefab, we're not looking at specialized. It would be, we could put it out to a few different to the different companies to see who could give us the best price, knowing that here's your limit to work within and what they can provide.
Yeah, as long as we know, that's important.
Yeah, and I won't be at the I don't know. I wouldn't be able to bring anything to the next council meeting. I'm in health, and I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm in training again that day. So.
Okay, and you want to give us an update then on Head Lake Park?
I do, yes. So we've had a playground meeting since the meeting that we had with Bob McLarty on site. And so I also presented to the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and they sent back some recommendations. So I prepared a chart with the recommendations and what some of the things that we've done that meet those recommendations, and other things I have some answers on that I didn't have until just this past week. During the site prep meeting, as you know, there was a lot of discussion about having a rubberized surface versus engineered wood fiber. I did get quotes on that. It's quite pricey, and you'll see if you look at the chart, which I believe is on the second page, to cover the entire surface in rubber surfacing, you're looking at $365,000, close to $366,000. And rubber surfacing has roughly a 10-year lifespan, but as Bob had mentioned, it could need a small section could need replacing after a year or two if there's a hole and somebody digs away at it. It does have to be repaired by a specialist, so not something that our staff could do in-house. And then we'd have to fence off the area in the winter to ensure that snowmobiles don't go across the surfacing. So knowing that, we had a fundraising committee meeting on April 20, at the end of April, and discussed the rubber surfacing at that. The current committee that we have, they felt that they have too many commitments right now and responsibilities, and couldn't commit to raising the additional funds for rubber surfacing. So as of this morning, we have $127,627 raised. So we're still shy of the $150,000 mark. The last little push has been a bit slower. So they don't feel that they'd be able to raise or have the commitment to raise an extra 300,000 plus for rubber surfacing. So that's something to consider. On here, it says staff are waiting for an installation date. I actually received some information Friday afternoon that they're able, the log timbers, the wooden structures are going to be leaving the factory that they were built at the end of May, but then Park and Play has to receive them, and then our date. So they had originally set a date for us at the end of July. By the time they would receive all these parts and they could do installation. However, that's right when the Arts and Crafts Festival is. So I asked if we could push it. They said we could go July 31st or later. We just have to make sure we get the site prep done before they come. So this is another discussion we'll have to see when we can get the site prep done without interfering with the Arts and Crafts Festival, and then get the playground in right away. And they'll work on it. They work Monday to Friday. If they have to, they'll work a little bit on a Saturday, but they try not to work right through the weekend. And then they'll come back if for the following week, if it's not finished.
So Andrea, your pricing now, does that include everything? Does that include all the excavation and all the
600,000.
So
the $365,000 that I was quoted was for the rubber surfacing. The excavation was part of the other quote for the playground. So that's still part of that $600,000 figure that we have. The 365 is for the rubber surfacing. I also broke it out. If we were to do like pathways, you'd be looking at around $103,000 because I asked if we could do like even take 1/3 of rubber surfacing and make pathways to the different equipment. Yes, that is possible. We have to lay it out in a map with them. And that would be roughly around $100,000. We still have to keep some money in for engineered wood fiber to fill in the other areas. And then as Bob had said during that meeting, if we were to do rubber surfacing, we need to remove the sand from under the swings.
We're kind of throwing the rubber surfacing out. It'd be nice, but we can't afford it. So
Yeah.
the second thing is the 300,000 we've committed, that's going to do it now, is it?
Yeah,
With the fundraising?
With the fundraising, there's nothing else owing from council or from taxpayers or anything. So with the fundraising and with the 150 from the Trillium and the 300,000 committed from council, we're good, unless there's some major loophole that comes up during construction. But it is surfacing and post holes versus poured concrete throughout the whole space.
And that's the money we're short. Some of that is site prep as well, which is being offered to be donated as well, right?
Well, as long as we're on the right page here, because 300,000 is a pretty generous donation or contribution, so.
It definitely
hopefully,
is.
People are wondering how we're spending 600,000.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then I had talked about, we had talked about in the list from the Joint Accessibility Committee, they said, consider installation of an accessible zip line. We had considered that in the original plans. There was also a zip track included. However, that was removed in favor of a larger log jam. They talked about installation of water stations, charging devices, etc. We do have an outdoor and an indoor water refill station. We have
Yes.
and we have the accessible change table inside the Welcome Center. There are some outlets in the park. So we have those sort of things. We also asked about putting a transfer station at the end of the slides, but because some of these parts have already been manufactured, we can't do that. However, moving forward with a new project, we could look at putting a transfer station. If we build a new playground somewhere, or when we're replacing equipment, we could look at putting a transfer station at the end of the slide. And then we asked about an expression swing. An expression swing is where people can swing facing each other. But that isn't possible at this point because, again, things have gone into production and some of the components were already created and made at that point because everything's done to order.
It's too bad we haven't got all of these things in one place. Like we were excited. This was going to bring, turn the world around, the skateboard park. And I'm watching it now and there's hardly anybody using it. So I hope that doesn't happen here. So 23,000 you're short. That's the fundraising committee still working on that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the fundraising committee is still working on that. And there's a few campaigns taking place right now. Like on the weekend, the Pump Shop did a fundraiser. Those funds are being donated to the project. Linda Baumgartner is doing a $3,000 matching fundraiser. So anybody who brings their money to Baumgartner Realty, she'll match those funds up to $3,000. There was a jump in the lake that Brandon Nemagon did at the beginning of May. So those funds are being donated. So there's some funds that aren't accounted for yet that are coming to the municipality from, and also Todd's Independent did, they did at this checkout, they were accepting funds and we haven't received that money yet either. And that's also to go towards the playground. So, that number will increase. It just won't be, like I said, it's the last little bit has been slower to build.
Yeah, well, especially when people get busy in the summer, it's harder to do. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, is any other questions then? I think you're on target to get it all done within that time frame. Well,
Yeah, needless to say, we don't have the money to put the rubber paths in, but I think that I just hope that these wood chips are going to be flat enough where people can push a wheelchair or a baby carriage or something through there. I think it'd be great if we could have just the paths done, but needless to say, we're $100,000 short.
Well, I think they are in other parks, so they should work.
Yeah, I hope so.
Hope so too. That's a good point. Okay. Resolution then?
All right, I've got two. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to apply for the Ontario Trail and Foundation Capital Grant opportunity to build new playground equipment and a permanent accessible privy at Harcourt Community Center.
Tammy and Barry, all in favor? Okay, now Head Lake.
Be it resolved, the council receives the Head Lake Playground Update Report as information and further directs staff to proceed with plans to purchase engineered wood fiber.
Okay, mover, Pat, seconded by Carm, all in favor? Carry. Okay. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, have a good day.
Okay,
Mayor Ferry?
yeah. Yeah.
Just when we were speaking of the fire ban, the actual county that has decided that the fire ban is going to be lifted at midnight tonight. The Highlander just reported that it is lifted now, but it is actually not in effect till midnight tonight.
Oh. Okay, there's the answer. Timing was good. Okay. Rob?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just a couple of things today. First is the bylaw update report for April of this year. If there's any questions council has, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Pat?
Rob, just driving by our friends up there at the old Ashley Hope Apartments, and I see there's no dumpsters there at all, and the garbage bags are starting already. Do we get anywhere with sending them a letter? Anyway, it's not at the stage where the raccoons are making off with it, but there's no receptacle there for them to put their trash in.
So I've discussed that with John Watson, environmental manager there, and we've talked about going, and we went through the waste bylaw. So there is something that I'm going to be following through with that, the owner of the property. There's something in there that that they have to I don't remember the exact wording, pardon me on that one, provide accessibility to their tenants for waste facilities. So whether that could be him coming in and purchasing every unit a dump card so they can go to the dump and properly dispose of their recyclables and waste, or provide new dumpsters. So that's an avenue that I'm going to be pursuing with them. I'm going to be drawing up a letter and getting in contact with the property owner, and hopefully that'll push them in the right direction to get some accessibility for those tenants to dispose of their waste properly. That way it's not bagging up on the side of the property, and bears and raccoons and that don't come into town and create more hectic mess than that's already been created.
But it won't be on the taxpayer to pay for that, I hope.
It shouldn't. It should be on to the ownership of the property. The owner needs to provide his tenants with them. So he would have to come into town hall here and purchase the dump cards for each of those tenants. It shouldn't be up to their tenants to come in and purchase them.
So I just want to be clear on this. So we're going to provide the dumpster. Who's paying for that, and who's paying to pick it up?
No, we're not providing anything. It's up to the property owner to provide the dumpster, or up to the property owner to come in and purchase the dump cards.
Okay. Okay, I hope that works. I guess then we need a resolution there. I'm sorry.
Be it resolved, the council accepts the bylaw update report for April as information.
Mover and seconder. Pat and Barry, all in favor? Carried. By the way, there's nothing happening at Wigamog that I can see.
Yeah, I think they were on a standstill for the load restrictions, but it's on my list for this week to get some contact information going and find out.
Really
what
not a very
stage
safe
they are.
situation down there.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna have an issue there, but I don't want to be pessimistic, but I am. Okay, no parking signs in front of the Legion.
So this was Don Pittman approached me about the no parking. There is a curb cut right in front of the entranceway of the Legion. During the winter time is when they most have the most problem with people parking and blocking that accessibility cut. So it is there for people with accessible restrictions, and for people who need to use it with the wheelchair or other mobility devices. So they're looking and requested that the township implement 2 no parking signs on either side of the curb cut to outline the they can leave cars from parking and leave it open for accessibility issues when because of there's the accessible parking up on the street as well. So they've requested that we put the no parking signs up there. Staff believes that it's a good idea to and then would support this recommendation to have it blocked off there, so accessibility onto that sidewalk and then into their facility would be easily accessible, instead of having to go all the way down the street or up and to another driveway to get to the sidewalk. They can quick.
So if you just put accessible parking only, painted it on the street, would that not work too?
It wouldn't be bylawed. That's the thing. We would need those signs to make it official and to add that onto I believe Schedule A or B of the parking bylaw, to add that section of Mountain Road to have it bylawed in there, so we can.
Okay, I understand. All right, any questions there? Okay, resolution.
Be it resolved that council accepts receipt of the letter from Don Pittman, president of the Halliburton Legion, and further direct staff to install no parking signs on either side of the curb cut in front of the Halliburton Legion and update the parking control bylaw accordingly for the installation of the no parking signs.
Mover and seconder, Walt and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, Carl, I guess you're next.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. Good morning, council. So onto the site alteration community engagement response report. So this was a great process that we went through. I've never been through this process before, especially on a bylaw matter when discussing the creation of a bylaw. But it brought in a lot of good information, worthwhile process for sure. So we started with a community stakeholders meeting, and we had about 27 people at that meeting, made up of Lake Association members, their directors, as well as contractors, as well as people from the environmental fields. It actually was a very respectful meeting, and we got a lot of good information from that. There was quite a few counselors that attended as well to help give opinion and provide some feedback as well. So a very good information. We did summarize the meeting, the responses that we got, and that's in attachment number 1. So that's basically a summary of the minutes from that meeting. Then we went on to get the questionnaire responses back, and we received 144 individual submissions for that. So the questionnaire, it asks questions such as, so the first one was, where should site alteration be permitted? And so if we go to attachment 2, you can see the responses, the number of responses for each of those processes. And it was some of them were very interesting. I didn't expect that the responses, and there were also a lot of additional responses to a lot of the questions that we allowed people to answer. Some of them asked for, so especially with the EP zone or fish habitat, they wanted no site alteration at all to occur within those areas, but that wasn't an option on the response, only because our zoning bylaw permits site alteration within those areas. So we can't say you can't have any site alteration. So again, with EP zones, you can construct a boardwalk through the EP zone, those types of things. It's less invasive, but you're still allowed to do something within that EP zone. It just can't be, off limits, let it grow in, nothing can be done. People are allowed to enjoy that property and create those things through our zoning bylaw. So we would have to amend our zoning bylaw to basically require nothing within those areas. So that's why it was not a possible answer. We limited to specific answers that are essentially permitted within the zoning bylaw. So with regards to where site alteration could be permitted, so on a developed lot, the frequent response was anywhere that's permitted to be cleared of trees. So again, where is it permitted within the zoning bylaw? That's where you're allowed to complete site alteration. On a non-developed lot, it was limited to specific areas and only when restoration of natural vegetation is also completed. So this would tend to, even though it's not the direction I was looking to go towards, people saw this as, well, it's a disturbed lot already, so somebody's went in, cut down trees, whatever, contrary to the existing requirement. So I guess it could have happened prior to 2012 when the first shoreline tree preservation bylaw came into place, those types of things. So if it's already a disturbed lot, they don't want, we shouldn't allow any site alteration unless some restoration is completed. So with regards to EP fish habitat, so that was an overwhelming response to limit to specific areas and only where natural vegetation is also completed. So if you refer to attachment 2, it gives the individual responses. As you can see, that was an overwhelming response. The second question that we asked was, are there specific restrictions that we want to employ within the bylaw? And some of these were with regards to retaining walls, silt control, foundation drainage, affecting neighboring properties, types of machinery, So those were, do we need these specific restrictions? So attachment number 3 gives the responses for that. And so we did have overwhelming response for foundation drainage too close to the lake and affecting neighboring properties. So that was a very clear response that people wanted, specific restrictions on that. Otherwise, with regards to retaining walls, slope stabilization, we can get away with just general restrictions, but machinery, type of equipment, machinery, it shouldn't even be in the bylaw. So I agree with those typical responses. The third question that we asked was, how should restoration of the shoreline to natural state be encouraged? And that's in attachment number 4. So that's the one that I was really struggling with to picture how we were going to attract this and encourage the restoration. And we had a lot of good information, and I summarized it into a few specific topics. So you could see in attachment number 4 that the highest one was education. So education has to be a very strong component. Enforcement was a second, then followed closely by property tax incentives, grants, etc. Making plantings readily available, that was a very important one as well. Municipal offset cost of plantings. So again, that could have been lumped in with property tax incentives, but you could see that there's a lot of very good ideas, and I included some of the unique responses because they got my my brain cells firing to come up with ideas. So some of them are students, summer students to do the plantings. So some of the local nurseries can hire summer students to help do the plantings to people that maybe elderly owners that can't do the plantings, or people that know how to plant. I don't know how to plant, so I would probably hire a student to come and plant. The second one was lump it in with the septic program. So I thought this was a very unique one where, because we've been discussing it, and I don't know if it's been made public yet, but we're looking to slow down the septic program a little bit, only because the industry can't keep up. So we have the septic installers that are trying to replace some of these septic systems, and we're having a hard time keeping up with all the septics that need to be replaced. So we almost need to slow down a little bit. And if we, let's say, half our program, so we're only doing, right now we're doing between 700 to 1,100 properties a year. So if we cut that down to half, and we do half the inspections, maybe we can do a whole shoreline or a whole lake health report for that property. So give them essentially a report card. Half of it's going towards their septic system, half of it's going towards what their waterfront is and their shoreline. And it would give them an actual grade. So, and they would look to improve that for the next go around. So the next time we're there, maybe their grades go up. And, that's, I think that was a very great incentive. Another incentive that another process that we had, and this came from Bree, our sewage system maintenance inspector supervisor. We get a list of every property that changes hands. So if we keep track of the ones that are waterfront, and we send them a information package, so when new owners come in, we send them a information package about shorelines, about the septic reinspection program that updates new owners, those types of things. So all about education. I think that will go a long way. As another comment on here was hold competitions. I thought that was great. And that report card thing would allow that to happen, because I get feedback from our septic inspectors who are out in the field, and the neighbors all gather around because we're on a specific street. The neighbors will gather around and say, oh, well, how did you do? How did you do? And then they'd all compare. So this would be a process where they can actually compare if they want to. And basically have a competition along that street or road or even a lake. Signs at the dump, everybody goes to the dump. All the property owners go to the dump. So amazing place to have a sign supporting that type of information. I just thought that these were really unique responses that meant a lot for these people to take the time and complete this process. The last component was just the additional comments. So site alteration questionnaire comments. So this is basically a free for all. Give us your opinions on what this is doing, what you want to see in this bylaw, or give feedback on the process or whatever. And we received a lot of really good responses. Some critical of the process, but that's to be expected. We're not expecting to satisfy everybody's requirements, but we're looking to have a reasonable common sense approach on this. And a lot of very good comments in here. That is essentially what we have with regards to this report. Any questions or comments from councillors?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say you did an exceptional job, Carl, in summarizing it and conducting the meeting, and I think it was a good process, and I think you got some pretty good results out of it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so I guess we can do a resolution on that. We're accepting that and move on.
Be it resolved that council received the site alteration community engagement responses information.
Mover and seconder, Walt and Pat, all in favor? Carry. I've lost Nancy, I think. Okay, so now the draft bylaw.
Yeah, so taking the responses from the questionnaires, so from the community engagement, I came up with a bylaw that mirrored a lot of the requirements that were in that bylaw, or sorry, in that the feedback from the questionnaires. So we started off in the bylaw with section 3, so general regulations. So it basically applies to all properties 30 meters, and basically no person shall conduct site alteration except in accordance with the bylaw.
And
So
that's because of the official plan, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the 30 meters is within again, it doesn't specifically say it within the official plan, but in our zoning bylaw, it has a range of 20 to 30 meters. But then in the shoreline tree preservation bylaw, it's 30 meters. So we're essentially going to mirror that process to the 30 meters. Then section 4 goes into exceptions. So again, we have exceptions for existing properties, except for certain areas, and we'll talk about those certain areas. Section 5 is general requirements for site alteration. 5.2 specifically, so on a developed lot that is not adjacent to fish habitat. Again, this comes from the presentation I provided. You can provide site alteration within all these areas. 5.3, on a waterfront lot that is adjacent to fish habitat, no site alteration is permitted. And the reason that that's in there, it comes from the feedback, from overwhelming feedback from the questionnaire, but also our tree preservation bylaw essentially does not permit any tree cutting that's adjacent to fish habitat. And we do define fish habitat. It's a very unique definition. So fish habitat, fish-related activities such as spawning, nursery areas, that's not very unique, but that are local interest to Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry districts and regions as identified in the ministry's GeoHub mapping. And the reason I went this direction is because it's public mapping that anybody can review that shows where the fish habitat is. And I gave an example during that presentation of Head Lake. It showed exactly where all the fish habitat was in correlation with that mapping. And that mapping is updated. So that might throw a bit of a wrench in there, because you might have fish habitat one year, but not the next. So again, not sure exactly how that's going to work out, but it's still something that I'm kind of tossing around and trying to figure it out. And it depends on which way council wants to go with this bylaw. I'm going to reach out to specific people. I have a list of people for fish habitat areas that I want to reach out to and see how we can make that work. But it depends on if council even wants to have anything about fish habitat. Like I mentioned, the county bylaw doesn't have anything about fish habitat within their bylaw itself. So moving on to 5.4. So again, within environmentally protected areas, so we can have the 1.5 meter wide walkway or boardwalk or landing, but only when if there's previous activities that have occurred, you have to restore that with natural vegetation first. So basically, you're allowed to do this, but you have to restore your just like what the questionnaire responses came back as. Section 6 is restoration of the shoreline. So 6.1 is for the developed property adjacent to fish habitat. The shoreline shall be restored to include a minimum 3 meter vegetation buffer setback from the high water mark, consisting of native shrubs and plants. So there were some questionnaire responses that came in that said, well, why don't we just restrict every property from cutting their grass that 3 meters from the high water mark? And that's an option as well that council can very well go with, and very easily, I think very easily enforced. From the perspective of if there are people that lake ambassadors, I think is what they're called. A lot of lake associations have these that go around and will report on this stuff and give a list back to the municipality. We can follow up on those things as well. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a neighbor complaining against a neighbor. It's if that lake association chooses to have a lake ambassador to go around and check to make sure that people are not cutting that 3 meter buffer. So again, it's an option that council can definitely go with. I think that would make more sense than requiring a 3 meter buffer of plantings. But it's again, that's something that would be up in the air for council to decide on. 6.2 for a non-developed property adjacent to mat fish habitat, the shoreline shall be fully restored utilizing. Oh, sorry, I think I mentioned that one already. 6.3 is for other non-developed property, site alteration that has occurred beyond the 5 meter wide path to the water shall be restored utilizing native vegetation. So again, that's restoring that non-developed property if it's been damaged in the past by past activity. And 6.4 is every owner who is sent a notice. So this is where there's an infraction. We know that there's an infraction. We're going to send a notice identifying you have this amount of time to restore that area that you've disturbed that shouldn't be disturbed. This is the process that they have to follow. And there's going to be a process where an appeal is made to the site alteration committee. So that's a process that is thrown into this bylaw. The site alteration committee is a committee made up of council, similar to our property standards committee or our sign committee, which I think right now is council, but it could change in the future. So anybody who wants to appeal a notice can go to this committee to appeal that notice. Then site alteration requirements. These are the specific requirements or general requirements such as retaining walls, silt control, the foundation drainage too close to the lake, and the affecting neighboring properties, those sorts of things. And then there's a process. Section 8 is with regards to relief. So if anybody wants to seek relief from this bylaw, they may do so by providing the appropriate information to the chief building official to review. And so any relief that's approved, there has to be written documentation and made available to the public upon request. If it's refused, then they can appeal to the site alteration committee and have that site alteration can overrule my decision. And that's essentially, other than the regular requirements. There is a set fine process that I'm also including on here with regards to specific offenses. So if, let's say, we witness something happening on site, we can give them a Part 1 offense notice and on site to deter that, as well as go back and give them a notice to get that property corrected. Any questions or comments with regards to the bylaw or any specific sections of the bylaw that council has?
Yeah.
Hey, Carl, just rewinding there back to the shoreline restoration and the detail on fish habitat you mentioned. You know, any shoreline restoration work we've been involved in terms of, you know, stone or Gabion stone or whatever has to be approved by the ministry. And, you know, being from the area, and I think everybody would agree that, and you mentioned it, where fish habitat's normally the whole lake, whether it's rock bass or bass or trout or whatever, to a certain degree, there's all different colonies of fish living everywhere. But you know, just take into consideration moving forward that, you know, if there's erosion repair that has to be done on that property, whether it's from wakeboard boats or even changes in weather, you have to be able to access that lakeshore in order to fix it. So again, you know, if they're getting sand erosion into a rock shoal that trout use for spawning, then to me that has to be repaired on that note. So just a note on that in terms of how to control that. And to me, that the homeowner has to have access somehow to his own property at the front in order to repair that. My own opinion.
Yeah, it's you definitely you have that one for sure. It's so yeah. Again, looking at the ministry requirements, they allow you to go in and restore without permits. They allow you to go in and restore any retaining wall that's at the water's edge, anything for deterioration. They allow you to basically repair that without any permits. So we can't say you can't get down there to fix that. So that's where there's a bit of a gap where you know it doesn't completely tie together. And so do we allow a 5 meter wide path, even though the tree cutting bylaw does not permit that? That's where I can't get through the tree preservation bylaw to make our bylaw work specifically. And that's, you caught me on that one for sure, Pat. And it's a fault of the bylaws trying to work together. But otherwise, the bylaws work very well together, except for that very specific component.
We just leave it in the hands of the M&R to, you know, it's not a free for all by any means, but by the same token, if somebody was doing something massively illegal, such as dumping 400 yards of beach sand on their lakefront and calling it, you know, shoreline restoration, is it something that we could just leave with the M&R and we stay out of that component?
Yeah, so we can only control what happens from the high water mark inward. From at the high water mark outward, that's M&Rs. We can't regulate that one bit. And yeah, so if they put it in the area where the water will come up into, that is the M&R's responsibility, not ours. We can't regulate that process.
That's a good point, Pat. So the timing on this, because there's a lot here to digest, you've done a lot of work on it. I got to give you credit. It's a pretty good start. Do you think that it'd be fair for councillors to take this back and to provide you whatever comments they have between now and the first meeting of the month, for sure, so that we can come back and I know that some of us don't want a bylaw, but this is not a permit. I think this is about as flexible as we're going to get if we tweak it a bit. I kind of think it's way better. I was going to ask you if the county rescinded Dysert's portion of the tree cutting bylaw, would that make any difference to our approach?
So it would. We'd have to create a full bylaw dealing with tree preservation as well as site alteration. That's what we would have to do if the county.
No, but we'd still get the same guy to enforce it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we can always have somebody on contract to enforce that bylaw with regards to the trees that knows trees.
I just wonder if it wouldn't solve some of your problems, but maybe not. I don't know. What's everybody think about coming back with whatever we think?
We can put it on the next agenda
Yeah,
for
like,
further
I'm
discussion.
not
with-
sure what I'm not prepared to say yes or no right now,
No.
for sure. I just been going through it here, every line there, Carl. I'm not arguing anything. I just not, I haven't
You
got
want
my
time
head wrapped
to
around it.
digest it. Fair enough.
Yeah. So why don't we bring it back at the next meeting? We just bring your comments to the next meeting and we can work through those then. Because it is a lot of information to digest. I mean, you council, this isn't the only report on the council agenda, so I'm assuming you're looking at other things as well. So we can definitely do that.
Well, that would be, I think would give us a little time to think it through and you know, we can, if we got responses before that, we don't need to wait. We can send them to you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And everybody all right with that? Well, that's good. Good work, Carl. You've done a lot of work on this for sure. Okay, resolution.
Be it resolved, the council received the site alteration draft bylaw report as information, and further the council directs staff to proceed with the bylaws proposed. Oh, sorry, I'm going to change that. Further, the council directs staff to bring back the proposed bylaw for further discussion at the next meeting. Yeah, no, because I haven't written it out.
You're making it up as you go there.
Okay, I'll read it again. Be it resolved, the council received the site alteration draft bylaw report as information, and further the council directs staff to bring back the draft bylaw for further discussion.
Mover and seconder. Scott and Carm, all in favor? Carry. Okay. Thank you, Carl and
Thank you.
Bob. Rod. Okay, Jeff and
Yes,
Chris?
good morning. I'll just get right into it. At the meeting in April, council directed staff to process a license of occupation application for 5 backlot owners on Mink Road. Notification process has been completed. There was 4 comments provided, which have been summarized and attached to the staff report. If council chooses to approve the request, a bylaw and draft agreement have been provided today for council's review. The term and fee for the license have not yet been updated in the agreement and remain at 1 year and $500. So staff seek direction from council if they wish to update that term and fee for the license. If council has any questions about that staff report, I'm pleased to answer them. And just of note, as you can probably see, Mr. Neeg, who is the agent for the application, is in attendance today.
okay. Okay, I don't know if this gentleman wants to comment on anything. I mean, there's quite a history here. You've been using that for, I don't know how many years, but ever since I've been around, I remember them there. So how many people are using that dock right now?
At the moment, it's being on the public, everybody is free to use. We are 5 families which apply for this permit.
5 families. Well, we're kind of looking at increasing the fee substantially on all of these because it's $100 is not enough. I don't know whether you could swallow hard or not, but how about $500 per user per year?
I don't know exactly how much the other situation like this are paying. For what we heard, they were really ridiculous, couple of dollars. The actual cost for us for last year, total cost, I mean, processing, licensing, insurance, etc., was around $2,500. That's how much it cost us total for the last.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but I understand that, but when you sell your property, you've got quite an asset. When you've got a dock on the lake, when you don't own the property on the lake, so. And we're not just
Unfortunately-
looking at you, we're looking at everybody that's going to do this.
Yeah, we understand, but unfortunately, as staff mentioned before, this permit is not transferable. So when we are selling the property, everybody has to start again the whole process because this permit is applicable only to the actual families, whoever apply or whoever owned the property at the time. The permit has been issued. After that, the validity is not transferable.
But you
So
do
it's
have,
not enough.
you have boats at the docks, right?
We don't have it now, but
You
there
will
are
have.
actually two boats. There are two boats
Yeah.
between the 5 families.
Well,
That's
you know,
all it is.
I guess you'd have the option not to pay the $500 and not use it.
Yeah, I totally understand your point, but as I said
Yeah.
before, it's not the actual asset for the property.
I understand your point. So I guess the question is whether we want to do it for 1 year or whether we want to do it for 2 or 3 years or.
I don't know, usually this permit has been approved for 5 years, as far as we know, but it would be up to the council to decide what and. Because every year, if you approve only for 1 year, every year we have to start again with all this application fee, the consultation to the public fee, signing fee, headache for you, time wasting for everybody, just for, again and again, as you mentioned before, discussions keep going on and on forever.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'd want to do it beyond this term of council because we're committing the next council to that. So that would be 4 years.
That's fair.
Okay. Is everybody okay with the fee then? Yeah, for each, everybody okay with that? Okay, so I guess that if you're going to redo the lease, it's going to be $500 per user. And there's 5, you say? And and the lease will be good for 4 years.
Okay, and that, sorry, just for clarification, you mentioned that, for example, if somebody who doesn't, let's say, doesn't have a boat, is going to say, okay, fine, I'm not going to pay this $500 because I don't want to.
Well, then I guess they don't need to use it.
That's fair. That's really fair. So that means it's going to be applicable to whatever. I'm just saying here, at the moment, there are 2 people who have boats there. Let's say it would be 3 people which want to put boats, there would be 3 boats. So that means there will be the maximum allowed, 3 boats, and everybody is going to stay within this and will be only 3 people paying.
Well, yeah, but that, like, what do they use it for if they don't put boats in there?
Just for recreational, because as we mentioned before, the shore is so steep, you really cannot even go to fish. We are falling down in the water.
The problem council's got is it's being used on public land, and that could change tomorrow. They could sell to somebody else and they'd have the right to use the dock and they'd put a boat in. So like, we can't be out watching that all the time, so.
That's fair.
That fair? I know you don't think it's fair, but it is fair, in our opinion. Anyway, so Jeff, do you understand now what the lease might read, or Chris?
Yep, no, I can take that. So I think council can still pass the bylaw. What I'll do is update the agreement based on the conversation today so that the annual fee is $2,500 and the term is, and just for clarification on the term, do you want it for 4 years or do you want?
Well, at the end of council, whenever that is, that'd be the.
Okay, I'll put till the end of the, I'll put the date of the end of the council term.
Yeah, the end of the council term. Okay, so that's in the resolution. Go ahead.
Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-51 being a bylaw to authorize execution of a license of occupation agreement with John Way, Karen Andrews, Brian Barkley, Angela Neeg, Nikolai Neeg, Kimberly Benoit, Mark Benoit, Martin Andrews, and Francesca Swanson for use of the original road allowance for road between lots 5 and 6 and concession 4 in the geographic township of Dudley. Be read a first, second, and third time, signed in the corporate seal attached thereto. And further, that the fee be set at $500 per year per residence for a $2,500 total for a term to coincide with this council term.
Mover and seconder. Walt and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next is road closing, yes. George Street between This is Emerson Lumber. We've had this here before. This is.
Yep, correct. And I can take that. So bylaw 2023-52 is a bylaw to close and convey a portion of the road allowance for George Street on Plan 1. So as you mentioned, this is adjacent to the lands of Emerson Lumber. The notice requirements for the application have been completed and 4 comments have been received. Comments were received from the Director of Public Works, the applicant himself, Mr. and Mrs. Savoy, who are the adjacent property owners, and Hydro One Networks. Mr. and Mrs. Savoy are located at 1 George Street, which I said is the adjacent property owner. You won't find their comments in the report. So I'll just briefly summarize them. They actually stopped by the office this morning. They're concerned that if this is closed, the winter maintenance potentially will leave a snow pile at the end of their property or in front of their property, which might cause them to lose a parking space. And they're also concerned about emergency vehicle access. Hydro has requested an easement over Part 2 on the plan, which is the entire road allowance. If council chooses to sell the road allowance, staff recommend an easement be granted to Hydro One prior to conveyance. And this is included in the bylaw today. And it was agreed to by the applicant. If council has any questions related to the staff report or any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So how do we resolve the snow plowing then?
I would defer to the Director of Public Works for that. He's outlined his concerns with regards to having to either back in.
Different piece of equipment. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I would definitely defer to Public Works for that. They've outlined their concerns and the applicants responded with options maybe to remediate those concerns.
Okay. So I'm sure that they can work with Kim to do that. I would think. Okay, resolution then.
Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-52, which is a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the road allowance for George Street, registered plan number 1, town plot of Halliburton, geographic township of Dysart, defined as part 2 on plan 19R10782, in the geographic township of Dysart, be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too.
Mover and seconder. Nancy and Barry. All in favor? Okay, next. Albert
Next,
Lake.
Yep, a draft bylaw for this file was reviewed by council at their meeting last month. A registered survey has now been received, so the bylaw can proceed. If you have any questions, let me know.
I think the staff report recommended that. So. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, resolution then.
Be it resolved, the council approves bylaw 2023-53, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the original road allowance in front of part lot 15, concession 10 in the geographic township of Harborne, to be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too.
Resolution. Mover and seconder. Carm and Barry, all in favor? Carry. Okay. Lanza Walker.
Yeah, so bylaw 2023-54, this is actually a correcting bylaw, just correcting the wording from a previous bylaw. So staff recommend approval of the bylaw, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, resolution.
Be it resolved, the council approves bylaw 2023-54, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the original road allowance in front of part lot 11, concession 4 in the geographic township of Guilford, to be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too.
Okay, mover and seconder. Pat and Carm, all in favor? Carry. Okay, next.
Michael and Elizabeth Cloutier, along with Lawrence Rempel and Melissa Fearing, have made joint application to purchase an original road allowance between their property that leads to Mesquabi Lake. The report outlines the policies of section 3.2.7 of the official plan, which is the policy that provides direction to council for the closing and conveying of road allowances. It should be noted that there is existing Bell Canada overhead lines located on the road allowance. And again, as outlined in the report, there is an encroachment issue and potential compliance issues that may be of interest to council. Specifically, it appears a pathway or driveway to the lake has been constructed on the road allowance. And there is a structure which appears to be some sort of gazebo type structure located on one of the applicant's docks. Based on that, official plan policies provide direction that council retain the subject road allowance for the purpose of long-term public access to the lake, but also for the protection of existing and future recreation or public services. Staff seek direction from council how they'd like to proceed with this request. And if you have any questions about the report, I'd be pleased to answer them.
I'm just not sure. Has anybody been, nobody's been out, I guess, to see this? I think, Jeff, do you think it'd be worth a site visit?
I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, so definitely it makes sense if council hasn't seen it to go out and have a look.
So we'll. Yeah. So I know Nancy's got other things on her mind, but can we get somebody to have a look at that maybe? Or a couple of people? Maybe Walt will meet you, Jeff, and go out there, or Chris.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Okay. So we're just deferring that then for site visit?
I'm just gonna say defer then.
Yeah. Yeah, just defer. Moving second to defer. Walt and Barry, all in favor? Barry. Okay. Morley.
Yes, this is for item 6F on the agenda. The applicant is proposing to sever the subject property to create one new severed lot and one retained lot for rural residential purposes. The proposal and applicable policies and comments have been outlined in the report. The proposal was circulated to internal municipal departments for comment. To date, one comment from Director of the Public Works was received, which outlined Public Works Department requires an entrance permit for the severed portion of the property. Clarification of the proposed northerly limit of the severed portion of the property. There is a substantial rock outcrop in that area where the entrance is being potentially proposed, or where the severed property is being proposed, and they just require just markings out of that area to ensure proper entrance onto Bitter Lake Road. Subject to the required conditions, the proposal will be consistent with the provincial policy statement, generally conforms with the municipal official plan, and staff recommend that council support the general principle of the proposal. And that concludes the summary of the application.
Any discussion on that? Resolution, I guess.
Be it resolved that council supports the general principle for file number DOOSB 2022-015 Lands of Morley, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Mover and seconder. Pat and Walt, all in favor? Okay, now we're into Harcourt Park.
Yes, this is for item 6G on the agenda. The applicant wishes to cancel 3 consents related to their lease holdings in Harcourt Park adjacent to Straggle Lake into one larger lease holding. The proposal was circulated to internal municipal departments for comment. To date, no concerns related to the proposal have been provided. It is recommended that council support the general principle of the proposed consent as submitted, subject to the register owner satisfying the recommended conditions. And that concludes the summary. And I believe Sue Harrison is in attendance if council has any questions or if she would like to speak further to the application.
So, any comments, Sue?
Just briefly, I would just add that this proposal is to the advantage of Straggle Lake because we're taking 2 existing lots off the lake, which is already highly developed. So I think it's beneficial to the lake in particular. I'm happy to answer any questions councillors may have.
Councillor Dolan.
I just have a question on what's the advantage to merging the 3 lots besides the less lots on on the lake.
Go
May I
ahead, Sue.
respond? Okay. Yeah, the property owner has purchased the 3 lots. He just wants a bigger lot and some more privacy. So personally, it provides for the type of lot he would like to develop. He has taken the other structures off the western property. The eastern property is vacant, and he has developed the middle property. So he'll be adding some landscaping in there, which will help with runoff also. But it's just personally, that is the type of lot he'd like to develop and have that privacy. And environmentally, it helps the lake by removing the 2 lots.
Okay.
Yeah, like, these are not like subdivision lots, so could somebody sever them off again? Down the road when he's done with it?
Right now, what this application does is under the Planning Act, these 3 lots basically merge and become 1 lot.
Right.
The leasehold issue is another layer of complexity. David Shapiro had provided a letter, which I included with the application. So I know we're in good hands with David to address the legal aspects of the application. But under the Planning Act, what this application does is create 1 single lot from 3 existing lots.
Okay, understand. All right, resolution then?
Be it resolved, the council support the general principle of a proposal for consent file number DOO-SV 2023-01 lands of RIMPA, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Mover and seconder. Tammy and Barry, all in favor? Carried. Okay,
Yes.
Friends of Limmer.
Yes, next item is 6H on the agenda. The proposal would sever a portion of land from the retained lot to create a legalized right-of-way to the dwelling located on the benefiting lot. Due to the steep topography and location of the existing road, which is Bay Breeze Lane, the owner of the benefiting lot requires the additional severed area for their driveway to allow for lower grade slope for vehicle access to their dwelling. The proposal was circulated to internal municipal departments and no comments have been received to date. And it is recommended that council support the general principle of the proposed consent as submitted, subject to the conditions as listed in the report. And again, I believe Sue was in on this application as well, but I don't see Sue there now if there was any further comments. And that concludes the summary.
So you're recommending it then?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Resolution.
Be it resolved that council supports the general principle of a proposal for consent file number DOO-SV 2023-03 lands of Lemmer, subject to the conditions outlined within the staff report.
Mover and seconder. Carm and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Okay.
And yeah, I can keep going. So the next item is 6I on the agenda, which is lands of Hunter and Gottschalk. The applicant would like to subdivide their property into 1 severed lot and 1 retained lot from the original subject property. The proposal was circulated to internal departments for comment. To date, 1 comment was received from the Director of Public Works. The Director of Public Works noted that requirement of a drainage easement over the east side lot line between the public road and stream to the south will be required. This has been added as a condition to the proposed application. Summary is it is recommended that council support the general principle of the severance proposal as submitted, subject to the included conditions provided in the report. And that concludes.
That's
the
down by
summary.
Tim Hortons, is that what that is?
No,
Where is that?
this one is up on
And at the end of Harmony Road.
Harmony Road. That's correct.
Oh, okay, okay, I know where it is now.
Yeah.
Okay. Resolution.
Be it resolved that council support the general principle of a severance proposal for file number DOO-SV 2023-04 lands of Hunter and Gottschalk, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Mover and seconder, Pat and Walt, all in favor? Okay. Next.
Okay, next
Land
is
of-
Oh, sorry. This
Go
is,
ahead.
I could just continue on.
Yes,
This is
yeah, please.
This is for item 6J, and this is for a proposal which would relocate and close the existing right-of-way easement and relocate it to the southern portion of the subject lands. For clarity, consent sketch was attached with the report. The proposal was circulated to internal departments and no comments received to date. It is recommended that council support the general principle of the proposal as submitted. Subject to the included conditions provided in the report and comments received through public process. And that concludes the summary of the application.
Sounds pretty straightforward. Resolution.
Be it resolved that council supports the general principle of the proposal for consent file number DOOSB 2023-05 Lands of Bacher, subject to the following, or subject to the conditions outlined within the staff report.
Moving and seconder, Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Okay, carry on.
Okay, so the next one is item 6K on the agenda. This is the register owner is proposing a new 557 square meter building that would house an outlet warehouse on the subject property located at 30 Industrial Road. The application is a request, or sorry, not the application, but the request letter was to ask for a waiving of site plan control for the proposed development. The owner has provided a written letter which was attached with the report. The owner noted in their letter that the new proposal will be more environmental friendly and the building will be in the area where existing storage tanks and parking were. There are 2 existing commercial driveways to service the building, loading and parking area. Prior to this request, a comprehensive pre-consultation process was completed with the municipality on February 13th, 2023. The process provides the owner with municipal comprehensive comments and requirements related to their proposal. The comprehensive comments were based on municipal policies and guidelines and knowledge of the property. As outlined in the pre-consultation review, the proposed requires site plan control, engineering plans, elevation, landscape plans, securities, and site plan drawings to demonstrate that the site can appropriately be developed in accordance with the noted policies in the report and more specifically the sections of the official plan which were identified in the report. Bylaw 2019-46 requires that site plan control for new commercial and industrial developments be required. Site plan control is a tool that is used by the municipality to ensure that the land development is designed appropriately, safe, functional, and minimizes potential impact on the property or to neighboring properties. It also ensures that the municipality's standards for developing properties are respected. The proposal was circulated to municipal departments for comment. To date, the following comments were provided from the Director of Public Works. From the Public Works perspective, site plan control is recommended for this development. Specifically, the municipality needs to ensure the existing rock retaining wall is not on the municipal right-of-way. Depending on the height, it may require engineering approval. Stormwater from the lot is also flowing from the lot across Industrial Road by way of the existing entrance. Stormwater should be controlled on the site prior to discharging into municipal ditch. General summary is the site plan control is required for new or expanding development to ensure that the property development is in accordance with the municipal policies that include proper engineering to avoid negative impacts on or to adjacent subject lands and to the adjacent wetlands in the area. Given the general concerns outlined in the report and requirements of municipal policies and guidelines, it is recommended that council deny the request to waive site plan control for the subject property to ensure the property is designed and engineered in the appropriate manner to implement the development standards of the subject property. And that completes the summary, and staff are here to answer any questions.
Go ahead. Well, I think, Chris, they were looking at it that it was actually a downgrade in terms of risk and commercial use with the tanks and stuff there. And they were prepared to be a little more lenient, maybe. So I don't know what your take on that is, but.
Staff are just basing it on policy and, you know, the knowledge and what we've seen out there. There has been erosion that's been going across the road with recent storms and rain. And the policies do direct that stormwater management needs to be addressed along with all the other requirements of site plan control. This also ensures that if there's any damages to the municipal right of way, or through the construction or even completion of the design or the property, that securities are collected and are able to be utilized to fix those issues. If not, then it becomes a municipal issue and would be taxpayer paying for these damages, potentially to the right of way, or trying to address neighboring issues that may occur.
Okay. Very.
I think I'd like to have maybe have a site visit with our guys and Jerry there before you decide. Like, I mean, we could push, we got another council meeting, what, in 2 weeks again? Can we do that, guys? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, if that's what council decides.
I'd like to be there for that too. On that note.
I got some concerns, but I don't want to kind of just throw them out there to you guys right now and blindside you with anything. So I'd like to be on site and discuss a few things and then go from there.
And then, of course, we still got the issue with Rob and the walls and stuff, so, and the stormwater management's an issue, so. Okay, so we can, yeah, go ahead.
Be it resolved that the request to waive site plan control for the lands legally known as concession 9 part 13 in the geographic township of Dysart be received for information, and that council defer the request to waive site plan control for the subject property to allow a site visit to review.
To allow a site visit, okay. Okay, mover and seconder. Yeah.
Just that I'd like to go to that meeting also. And who else would be coming there? Would we have Rob there and?
Rob and Chris or Jeff. One or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll move. Did I get a mover and seconder here?
No, I need.
No, mover and seconder. Walt and Arm, all in favor? Carry. Okay. Review of Highlands East Tower sitting and consultation protocol.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, at the meeting last month, council directed staff to bring this back. The staff report basically just summarizes the policy, including the purpose outlined in their policy, the scope, the tower siting guidelines, and the public consultation requirements. So basically, I just summarized everything. I understand it's a lot to take in. So based on previous conversations of council, if I had to highlight a few items for council's attention, I would note the following. So the policy clarifies that the municipality cannot assess submissions based on criteria such as potential health effects or impacts on property values, as these items fall under federal jurisdiction. Their policy is interesting, and I like it because the tower siting policies are broken down into 3 areas. It has preferred locations. These include government land, non-residential areas, and locations that protect view corridors. It also includes highly discouraged locations, which do not comply with the official plan. These include wetlands, environmental protection areas, and areas within 20 meters of a water body. Excuse me. And lastly, they also include discouraged locations that require the applicant to provide more supporting information to address. These are areas within specified distances of wetlands, EP areas, and within 30 meters of a water body. So I thought that was interesting. The policy outlines that the initial proposals are to follow the federal government's default public consultation process. Having said that, if certain criteria are met, enhanced public consultation through Highlands East is required. And that criteria includes if the proposed tower is within 500 meters of a settlement area, if the proposed tower is within 500 meters of a high water mark of any lake or within a waterfront designation as per our official plan. And lastly, if that tower is within 500 meters of a permanent or seasonal dwelling. So in these instances, enhanced public consultation would be required, and that includes a public open house. The policy also includes municipal design guidelines, which include recommendations for camouflaging, screening, and setbacks. Those are some of the key points. I'm just quickly looking to see if anything else jumps at me, but those are some of the key points I think I'd like to bring to council's attention. If you have any questions related to this policy, I'll do my best to answer it, but all in all, I think it's a good policy.
It's certainly better than what we got now. So would we just go ahead and adopt that at some point? Tammy, you're most concerned.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for doing the homework on that. Yeah, I think that one, if we adopted this policy, Highlands East has already done all the work.
Yeah.
And two, it brings our policy 38 from being what Roger says out of date from 2014 to 2023. So it updates it. So that will be positive for us. And I mean, there's still a lack of a few things in there, but it's definitely better than what it was.
And if there is extenuating circumstances, it allows you to do it.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Would it be okay if we put this off to the next meeting? Chance to digest it?
Yeah,
That'd be,
absolutely.
this is a lot in there. We just make sure we're gonna do it right. Get it
That's
done.
exactly, I hear you. Yeah, sure, we can defer that too. So we'll have a resolution then and bring it back to the next one.
Yep, be it resolved that council accept the report pertaining to the telecommunications antenna tower siting and consultation protocol for the municipality of Highlands East.
Mover and seconder, Pat and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Okay, now these unregulated floating houses.
Yes, and this seems to be an emerging topic across the province. The Gloucester Pool Cottagers Association has submitted a request to council to pass a resolution asking Transport Canada to reclassify floating homes in Ontario from vessels, which is the current definition, to float homes, which is the desired definition. The reason they want this is if they become float homes, it gives the municipalities options to proceed to enact and enforce bylaws pertaining to them, including zoning and building. Excuse me. So that's the request. If council has any questions related to this topic or to the report, I'd do my best to answer them.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Jeff, it has a picture of basically storage units floating. Does it take into like a more common vessel like houseboats?
Well, and I am not the expert on this matter, but my understanding is if it was a houseboat, it could still be classified as a vessel under by Transport Canada. I think what they're trying to regulate is these float homes, which are kind of moored in one location and causing disturbances.
We got one.
So because it's regulated, I mean, defined as a vessel right now, it falls under federal jurisdiction. So even the Ontario government appears willing to bring these floating homes under regulation, but because it's defined under federal regulation, they can't. So if they change that definition, it opens up so Ontario can, so the municipalities can just add a few more regulations.
So Jeff, do we have the power at council to just say that none of these are allowed in our community? Or is that?
I don't think we do.
No.
Well,
'Cause
what's being
I'm
requested-
totally against anything related to it.
Yeah, what's being requested today is just a resolution to support this initiative, and it would go back to the Gloucester Pool Cottagers Association. They could provide council's resolution themselves to Transport Canada to just kind of back up the cause. If they are redefined, it would give us a little bit more control because we do zone our lakes and rivers designation. We just, because it's again defined as a vessel, which is a federal jurisdiction, we can't control what a vessel does. And you could say, sorry, Councillor Casey, you could say, yeah, you don't want them at all.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that somebody could just put a container on some styrofoam and live in it on the lake.
Currently, Rayton Head Lake, yes.
I think I'd be against that. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Well, we have one on Lee has one floating, doesn't he? Yeah. So we have no jurisdiction now. So this, if the province does that, it'll give us jurisdiction to ban them. Yeah, I agree. I think we should support the
Have a resolution.
yeah resolution.
Be it resolved, the council support the request from the Gloucester Pool Cottagers Association and the Float Homes Not Vessels Coalition regarding their efforts to urge the federal government of transport to reclassify, excuse me, unregulated floating accommodations from vessels to float homes. And further, council directs staff to send a copy of this resolution to the Gloucester Pool Cottagers Association to be shared with Transport Canada and the Minister of Transportation.
Yes.
Do we still get to say whether we can have them on our lakes?
If the province passes something, yeah, we wouldn't be
This
allowed.
doesn't mean that, I just want to make that very clear.
Right now, we have no jurisdiction.
Yeah, so it would come back to us to pass this, to say yes or no.
If the province put legislation in place to do it.
This is just us supporting another municipality who's making that bid to the government.
I think that they will do it. They should do it. But the bottom line is, well, we don't have any authority right now.
We don't have any authority to stop this?
Jeff has a point.
Yeah.
I was just going to outline that our zoning bylaw does zone the lakes and rivers zone. So if the federal government did decide to change the definition from vessel to float home, it would automatically become not permitted in our lakes and river zone because it's currently not a permitted use.
But it's the federal government that needs to move here.
Yeah, right now they're still considered vessels.
Okay. Not very reassuring, is it? Anyway. No.
The Lake of Bays thing is well written. It's very clear and explicit.
Yeah. You want more motion now? Are you ready?
I read it, I just need one second.
Yeah, okay. You read it already?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I didn't hear you. Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Any notice of motions? Okay, confirming bylaw.
Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-55 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on May 23rd be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Mover and seconder. And Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Now, the adjournment.
Be it resolved the council adjourn this regular meeting held on May 23rd at 12:31 p.m.
Moving seconder, Tammy and Walt, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.